Okay, members of council, please take your seats. This meeting is now resumed. Before the recess, council was debating item EX 31.2. We will now return to that item. Are there any quick releases? Well, we have item 3 that was held down that can be released. The poor staff want to go home. All right, I guess not. Item number 3, Councillor Davis held it down. Councillor Carroll, clarification of the motion to Councillor Matlow. 3 minutes.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I have the motion now, and the only thing that's not in it to clarify, you're asking for a portion of, and I would assume that you're just asking for that negotiation, and so how much that would be is up to the province if they grant it. But when you go on in number 2, if not granted, if we were to collect it ourselves, do you have an idea of what that would net the city?
Yeah, well, there are a number of estimates based on a report by KPMG that was brought to Executive Committee in 2016. And it really all depends on what the rate would be set. So I'll give you an example. If it was 0.5%, it's estimated at $124.9 million a year. At 1%, it could be $261.4 million. 1.5, it could be $391.4, and at 2%, it could be up to $514.9 million. And the same report suggests that they refer to a U.S. study that says that a general sales tax grows approximately at the same rate as the personal income. So it's the most stable revenue tool to use in the long term in comparison to others. The other thing that you should be aware of is that if we are going to consider, if we have the ability to have our own retail sales tax, we have the ability to make what is by nature a regressive tax do a lot of good progressive things. So we have the ability to exempt things like children's clothing, pharmaceuticals, etc., for lower income middle class, like New York and other cities do.
Right, I see that in Clause C. And you're using, in those numbers, you're using the more conservative of the estimates we've received. You're using the KPMG.
Yes.
You're aware that Hemson predicted that basically Toronto could net every year $500 million of new money in a moderate income, and the whole of the GTA would be $1 billion. The other half a billion would be spread amongst the 3 regions of the GTA.
You are correct, and if we did this, and along with our Greater Golden Horseshoe partners, we could have a historic opportunity to finally build the transit projects, the housing, the infrastructure priorities that we have been talking about for a long time.
Okay. That would be recurring money every year.
So therefore, we could actually have long-term planning and not just say we're going to do something and pass a in-principle kind of motion, but then actually have the funds to budget long-term to be able to see them through to fruition. You're correct.
Thank you. Those are my questions, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In part 2, you say if the harmonized sales tax is not granted, that we should ask the province of Ontario to, under the provisions of the City of Toronto Act, to provide for a sales tax. But then in part B, you say coordinate with other municipalities on a sales tax, but they don't have the same conditions of the City of Toronto Act.
Well, I believe they should.
The question is to Councillor Matlow. Sure.
Through you, Madam Speaker, I believe they should, and I believe if you spoke with Mayor Crombie of Mississauga or Mayor Burden of Oakville and others, they would concur that they need something like a sales tax for their municipalities. I believe, though, that if we are granted the opportunity to have a city retail tax, we should take a leadership role in bringing along our partners to mitigate the possibility of sort of a cross-border concern. So we want to bring them together.
Okay. So I just want a clarification. They do not at this time have the power to implement a retail sales tax?
They, like we, want to.
Right, okay. But they do not have their own specific act that would allow them to do it?
No. None of the municipalities in our area do.
I didn't think so. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mammoliti to speak.
I have a lengthy motion. It's my typical motion that I try to pass every year. I'll want it vote on it separately with every single item later. I do know what the taxpayers want because I am listening to many of them, and when I see them on the street, or if I see them in a grocery store, or if I see them and they come up to me in a restaurant, they're all saying the same thing. What are you doing down there? What's going on? You're raising budgets. You're spending like fiends, and you're not getting our blessing to do it. And what I think needs to happen, and I've said this for a long time, is for us to take a step back, considerable step back. We have now increased Toronto's budget by $2 billion since 2013, and our services have not gotten better. Our constituents are not happy. Our constituents want to go back to the basics and run a municipality the way it should be. They want the roads repaired, cleaned. They want our sidewalks cleaned with debris, fixed, snow removal. They want weeds taken out. We've neglected our city that way. These are the sorts of things. They want our parks cleaned up. They want they want to be able to be proud of their park yet again in their community instead of it being ignored. And so we stand up here and say we should increase billions of dollars to our budget and just forget about the necessities of local communities and what they want. And some of us want to bring that back. And the way to bring that back is to reduce the budget to a reasonable amount of money and start fresh. Go back to the basics. And then figure out what the priorities are. My community does not want to pay for TTC anymore. They don't want it to be a municipal issue. They want it to be the provincial government that pays for it. Ask them. They'll tell you that. They don't want this. All we're doing is going crazy with these debates and figuring out which subway we should have and which LRT we can afford on 8 cents on the dollar. It's not about anything. Councillor Matlow stands up and says, you know, people are phony. They're not real. The reality of the situation is it's the services that don't match the dollars. And we increase and we vote in favor of the $2 billion increase over the last 4 years with nothing to show for it. Nothing except an increase in our social costs. My community doesn't want to pay for those social costs anymore. They're saying enough. They're saying give the province back the TCHC units. Let them manage them because we can't. These are the sorts of things that we have to cut back on and do it in these kinds of settings with our budgets and then start over again and figure out what our priorities are in the city. We have lost touch with the taxpayer. We think we're bigger than them in this chamber. This cockiness that's going on with politicians, with staff, it's getting ridiculous and people are getting sick of it. I certainly am. And I'm not going to shut up, folks. You know, some of you are saying, "Where were you last meeting?" Well, what do you care? You know, on one hand, you don't want me here, and every time I stand up, you've got something to say about my speeches. And then when I'm not here, you say to me, where are you?
Okay.
Make up your mind.
Councillor Mammoliti, hold on. I have the point
of
of
course
personal privilege.
On a point of personal privilege, I would ask that the member retract his comment in reference to the cockiness of staff. Staff are not able to stand up and defend themselves, and I'd ask that he apologize and retract that comment. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mammoliti.
I believe that our staff are becoming cocky.
Okay, Councillor Mammoliti, could you apologize, please?
To who?
The staff. The comment you made about the staff.
If you wish me to apologize, I'll do that.
No, Councillor Mammoliti.
In order for me to stay in the chamber, I'll do that. Does it mean that I believe it?
Okay.
I'll apologize because you want me to.
Councillor Mammoliti, maybe you're cocky, but the staff are not cocky. So
Maybe.
Okay? So please apologize to
I
staff.
just did. I did. Can I go on now?
Go ahead.
So at the end of the day, there will be more attempts by individuals like me. And I think, believe it or not, it's going to grow from one person to a few after this election. I think most people are going to hear what we've done wrong in this chamber for the last 4 years. A poodle park is not the way to run a city. A $3 billion poodle park. When I can't even get a swing set, I cannot get a swing set replaced in my ward because we don't have the money. I can't get the weeds pulled out of our sidewalks and our roads because we don't have the resources. But we do have the $3 billion it's going to cost for a park in Councillor Cressy's ward. We have that. These are the sorts of things that we're going to hear about. We're already hearing about them. I'm hearing about them. I said at the beginning, this is an $11 billion boondoggle. That's one budget. It's $17 billion.
Councillor Member,
and we're not showing anything for it.
your time's up.
Okay.
Councillor Carmichael Greb has a question for you. 3 minutes?
I won't take 3 minutes. Can I just see the motion just up on the screen? You had a bunch of positions, new positions for 2018 that you said to cut. And one of them was the Chief Transformation Officer. You understand that he's already working here and has been since May?
I want to go back to the basics. I want this budget brought back to under $10 billion. And then once we've done that, we can figure out what our priorities are.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. He doesn't, yeah, he's not going to answer that question.
That's fine.
Okay. Councillor Fragedakis.
Okay. Thanks, Madam Speaker. I have a motion. If the staff could put it up on the screen, it's. I hope that you can all support this, and it's that City Council increased the 2018 TTC operating budget by $2 million to provide additional funding towards overcrowding, and also to report back both to the TTC and to the Budget Committee in the second quarter of this year. So I don't think I have to tell anyone in this chamber about the overcrowding problem that we have on the TTC. There are the major disruptions that make the news daily, and the overcrowding on the many routes and stations that actually take their toll on the residents of the city. And I am sure that you, like me, get the calls and emails from your residents. And when there's a major delay, it has a ripple effect all through the city. So yes, there are investments and projects in the works to make the TTC better, but I think we need to do more. The budgeted TTC ridership for 2018 is 539 million rides. And it really is the lifeblood of our city. The money in my motion asks for is not a lot given the size of TTC operations, but I actually think it'll help to improve TTC service. To be sure, more money would probably help, but I hope you can support this request. There are some other important investments that we need in order to create a more livable, sustainable, and attractive city. So I'll be supporting some motions today that address issues like childcare and poverty reduction. And I would agree with those that suggest our federal and provincial partners should do more to help Torontonians. But I also worry about how much we ask of our staff and whether or not departments can meet the challenges ahead, because we have new technologies and new residents, and there's greater and greater complexity that needs to be managed. So I actually want to take this opportunity to thank the staff who helped with this budget, and also take this opportunity to thank the Budget Committee and Chair Crawford and all the residents and the civil society partners that came out over these last few months to all of the various meetings and community consultations to help with the budget process. The latter often don't get the congratulations that they deserve for contributing meaningfully to the deliberations here at City Hall.
Okay. We do have a question for you by Councillor Burnside.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, that $3 million, what would it be used? Like, how would it be used to?
It's actually $2 million.
$2 million. How would it be used to?
It's to relieve overcrowding. So I'm not saying whether it's bus overcrowding or whether it's station overcrowding. I'm just saying that staff can figure out the specifics about how to deal with overcrowding.
Okay, so but how did you arrive at $2 million? Like, if we don't know what we're doing with it, how do we know it's going to be effective?
Well, something's got to be better than nothing. Have you been on the subway lately or on a bus?
Well, no, I understand that, but it's $2 million. I just don't know what it's going towards. So that how do I make a decision if it's a good use of money if I don't know where the money's going?
It's going to deal with overcrowding as staff at the TPC decide how they want to spend it.
Councillor Carroll, I appreciate it, but I don't know what I'd do without you. But
Councillor Carroll, can you please stop interrupting when people are talking?
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, just a sec.
My question answered. Thanks.
Yes, Councillor.
On a point of personal privilege, Madam Speaker, that time I simply mouthed the word crowded, mouthed it.
But
so I would appreciate your apologizing for using my name. When I did not interrupt, I mouthed the word crowding.
Okay, Councillor Carroll, when somebody is speaking and asking a question, it's best that the councillor that's asking the question and speaking answer the question and not from you across the council chambers.
So, Madam Speaker, I'm going to repeat my point of personal privilege. That time I mouthed the word crowding. So I'm wondering if you could apologize for chastising me for interrupting.
No, because I don't think I interrupted. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, I'll send it in writing.
Okay, that's fine. Councillor Pasternak to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have three motions, if we could put them on the screen. The first one is for Council to approve the extension of the participatory budgeting initiative, which we brought to Budget Committee, I believe, in December 2015. The three-year pilot has been completed, and we're making that subject to the 2019 budgetary process. The second relates to a $4.95 million in Toronto Water. They've asked for an extra $3 million for tree planting. The big problem that we find across the city is when Toronto Water does some capital work on a boulevard or on the public right-of-way or on someone's front lawn. The complaints come in about the remediation and the sod planting, the grass planting, and we bring Toronto Water to talk about what they're willing to do, and they say they don't have the money. So we'd like that spread over front lawn repair after construction work as well as tree planting. And finally, I'd like to move a motion to delete recommendation 203, which is an attempt to close our constituency offices in the inner suburbs where they're vitally important. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Budget Chief Crawford for the remarkable work he's done on this package. I'd like to thank the Budget Committee and, of course, our finance staff. Having spent 4 years on Budget Committee, I know the enormous amount of work it takes to put this package together, the hundreds, if not thousands, of hours, and they've done a great job. And I would simply say welcome to the Vital Centre, because that's the package you're looking at. You're looking at a very important balancing act between the programs and services that Torontonians have come to need and want and support, as well as the ability to keep the tax rate at the rate of inflation, to make sure that we're not pushing seniors out of their homes, to make sure that we're giving young people the opportunity to own their own homes, and to make sure we make sure the city is livable. When you look at the various departments that are under my committee, we see dramatic investments. Shelters, we're sheltering more people than ever before, we're saving more lives than ever before, and we're providing more support services in conjunction with the provincial government than ever before. In children's services, we are on the road, if not now, to creating more spaces than ever before, more subsidies than ever before, making sure that families with children have various options before them, either to return to the workforce, to go back to school, so that there's no closed doors, there's no glass ceilings. And in recreation, I can also say that we've had more expansion of our recreation programs with 20,000 new spaces. Our PFR staff have done a remarkable job in making sure that we are building capacity across our system. And of course, we have more free programming than ever before. We have more community centers than ever before. And if you look closely at the capital budget, there's some very exciting things happening. These investments, as well as many others, are crucial to make the city livable, to attract people from all over the world who want to settle here, to make sure our community is safe or secure, to make sure that the homeowners have their houses protected through flooding remediation, making sure that we're very aggressive in enhancing and expanding our park system, preserving our ravine system, and making sure that tree planting remains robust. These are the things that make a strong city. The package before you is very strong in that regard, and I just want to once again commend all the people behind it. I left out the mayor in my first go-around and thank the mayor very much for supporting what I think is a very responsible budget, which is very strong when it comes to city building and will set the pace for years to come. Thank you.
Councillor Burnside, do you have a question?
Yeah, sorry, I don't have the motion in front of me, but through you, deleting the office, or deleting the part that in respect to the office budget for rent of off-site locations. What's the cost of that? Sorry.
Well, I went to the clerks to find out whether we needed some kind of an offset because it's a deletion, or where the savings would go into a reserve account.
There's no savings.
The message I got back was that it's cost and revenue neutral, and no offset is needed.
How's it revenue neutral? Sorry.
It's cost neutral.
Cost neutral.
That's the answer I got back. I mean, what the real issue is the inner suburbs.
No, sorry, not to interrupt, but the issue is what the cost is, and I don't understand how it's cost neutral. I understand where you're coming from, I understand, but I'm simply, this is a budget we're talking about, I'm just trying to understand the cost implications. I don't know how there's not a cost implication if we're going to be spending, if certain councillors are going to add back in money for rent.
I understand there's a cost if you go into a civic center or other city-owned or agency-owned buildings. There is a cost and a debit to your councillor budget. If we're on private property, it could be more, it could be less.
Madam Speaker, really?
Yeah, I'm going to have to speak to staff about this one.
Madam Speaker, with all due respect, before tabling this motion, I made a point of going to our clerical staff who circulated the motion and said that no offset or no direction to a reserve account was necessary.
But
I am moving it on that basis.
There's 11 people that have an $18,000 limit.
Glenn? Okay, so Councillor Burnside.
Yes?
Apparently what staff are telling me is that Councillor Campbell put forward a motion for a policy change. And so what Councillor Pasternak is doing is just removing that, so there's no money involved. Correct? So there's no money involved.
There is no impact in the 2018 budget. All of the leases for constituent offices outside of civic centers end on December 31st.
Okay. Councillor Doucette.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do have a motion. The City Council direct the Deputy City Manager, Chief Financial Officer to report to the April 17, 2018 Executive Committee meeting on reinstating the personal vehicle tax as described in Municipal Code Chapter 765, with the examination of implementing a decreased fee for hybrid and electric vehicles and an exemption of residents aged 65 and older, and that this revenue will be dedicated to improving the TTC service capacity and to general road maintenance and upkeep. Now, I know as long as I've been here, we have been, well, some of us have been wanting to bring back the personal vehicle tax. We heard from the city manager today that this is something we can do, and we can do it immediately without going anywhere. In 2010, the last full year this was in place, it brought in $48 million. So my belief is, my first budget, this program was cancelled, And I believe it was cancelled because the money went to general revenue. I believe that if this money goes to helping transportation, so the people who actually have the car, help them maintain the roads, and definitely help our overcrowded subways and buses and streetcars, I think this is a sensible way of bringing in some extra revenue for our city. So I will definitely be supporting Councillor Vagadakis' motion regarding trying to help our subways, particularly the subways, our streetcars and our buses. My staff come in by TTC. One couldn't get to work today because the buses weren't running. She was also stuck on St. John, well, it was on Jane Street, so there was no bus at that point. She was also stuck at St. George subway on that Thursday when everything which one could go wrong did go wrong. She said it was terrifying. When she texted me, I said, walk. She says, I can't get out of a subway. I can't get off a platform to get above ground to walk. I couldn't do that. I don't like closed spaces. So we do have to put funding to protect our residents and to help get our streetcars running, to get us more buses. We need to do this to get people out of their cars. This is the first year moving forward that the city will be paying for crossing guards. I hope that with this, that our local police department no longer have to step in when a crossing guard is on vacation or a crossing guard is sick, that I know we can reallocate these officers to traffic enforcement. A lot of our residents say to us, you know, why can't we have more traffic enforcement out there to keep cars abiding by the rules, going to the speed limit, not making turns where they shouldn't. By having these officers now available to do this, I believe it will make our streets safer, and particularly in our school zones. You heard me asking questions of the park staff regarding the Parks Ambassador. I feel that this is a very important program which we should be enhancing. As you also heard, this program started downtown several years ago because we had a lot of homeless people living in our parks downtown. This is now spread. As you know, I look after Hyde Park. I represent Hyde Park area. We have men and women who live in the park. They have nowhere else to go. And these ambassadors go into our parks and they meet with these people. And they don't kick them out. They work with them to meet with Streets to Homes, to meet with other community groups who can help them find accommodation, help them find employment, get them into a shelter. One person and a couple of part-time people in the summer are not enough to do this. We need to enhance that program. I would just also like to thank all the staff who have put together this budget. I would like to thank Councillor Crawford, and I may not have been at all your budget meetings, but I was listening to you, and I ran in when I had some input. So thank you very much for the way you've handled the budget for the last 4 years. I really appreciate that. I also want to thank the Energy and Environment staff for working through Transform TO. This is something we should have done years ago, but now we are going to do it. We are going to put our money where our mouth is. We are looking forward to the future. We are going to make this a better city for people to live. As you heard me say in part one of today's meeting, I do have some concerns about this election budget, this Band-Aid budget, and this unsustainable budget, and we will have to deal with that this time next year when we sit in this council chamber. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Troisi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a motion on the screen that City Council increase Parks, Forestry and Recreation's 2018 Executive Committee recommended operating budget by $350,000 to better meet service needs in 2018 by adding 1 permanent full-time Parks Ambassador, 3 seasonal positions, and increasing all seasonal positions from 6 to 9 months, and that the increased expenditure be offset by a contribution from the Tax Rate Stabilization Reserve. These staffing levels would allow for 3 crews, including 1 dedicated crew, to respond outside of the downtown, as we all know that this is a citywide issue. This program is critical to providing safe parks and ravines throughout our city. I wanted to bring it up as a motion because I'm very passionate about this program. It is most effective in outreaching to our homeless and keeping our parks and ravines very safe. So I'll give you some background on the park ambassador position, because in 2003, as a parks manager of community engagement, I created this position in 2003 when we had to deal with the ongoing issues in wards 20, 27, and 28 on homeless. So I wanted it to be, in fact, a homeless outreach worker, but it ended up being titled a Parks Ambassador because I don't think the city was ready for that title at the time. In 2004, it was so successful that we increased that FTE to 2 FTEs and 4 seasonal. And it still was only for those 3 downtown locations. In 2008, this initiative won the Gold Award from the province of Ontario, and it was also the initiative that gave other divisions the thought of creating Streets to Homes initiative. In 2009, the staff went down. It decreased to the 1 FTE and the 1 seasonal staff complement. And at the same time, as it decreased in staff, it went citywide. So a very effective initiative like this that had exactly what I'm proposing today in 2004, we need to get back to that because the numbers in which the Parks Ambassadors are reporting is just increasing, especially last year and this year. We're seeing such high volumes of homeless in our parks and people encamping in our ravines. So I'd ask for your consideration for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holliday to speak.
Thank you, Speaker. We're just last minute check here with the clerks, but I've got 2 motions if I could just get them on the screen. All right. So the first is a change to $11.1 million in funding related to the 2-hour transfer. And it's basically the effect of the motion is to ask the TTC to fund that through fares, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And the second motion is a report request. And if I remind councillors of some of my questioning about the MLTT and the absence or basic policy around how the MLTT matches our capital program. And effectively what we learned was that $40 million of the capital program is connected to the MLTT. I think there's probably opportunity to expand that. And a lot of councillors spoke about it at council about some concerns about the future of the MLTT and what happens if the real estate market makes a change. And I wonder if there's a better way to structure some of the policy around that. I'm not going to try to do that on the council floor. I'm going to ask the CFO and the city manager to come back in time and think about how we can do that. And I would really ask councillors to think about how we match MLTT spending to something that is more scalar so that we can protect ourselves. I'll go back to the original motion on the TTC. I asked some questions here about the briefing note about how some of the ridership numbers were calculated. I use the TTC a lot. I've done this for a long, long time when I travel from the West End into the city. And I can say in like 25 years, there are very few instances when I've ever tried to make multiple stopovers. I find I do a bit of business at either end of my route, but not necessarily in the middle. So I'm really having a hard time understanding how the estimates were generated, and I had some information that came up here. But I'll take the staff's argument about Presto being very, very complicated. You swipe your card at one spot, you transfer vehicles, you swipe again, and I know I've done this many times, and I kind of scratch my head wondering, you know, have I been double charged? Is the policy working? You know, is the computer smart enough to know that I'm making a transfer, there hasn't been a delay? And so I understand the component of the briefing note that talked about that, but maybe there's just an easier way to make this work. But I don't necessarily agree the arguments that for some reason the tax base suddenly has to take up all the risk on this or has to fund this. You know, I think it's going to be a little bit of an enhancement for a few people that might use it a few times a month. If you multiply $3 times 40 rides a month for your average commuter, that's $120, and there's a small delta there between $120 and $145 for a Metro Pass, or $134 if you're on the Metro Pass discount plan. So you're really talking about a saving of a few dollars there. And, you know, I think the proper way to do that is to have it through the fare system and to look for opportunities for savings through the TTC. You know, I asked, you know, what was the last fare increase? Well, it was 10 cents, and the number I got, I think, was $37 million. So if the cost of this program is $20 million, if the assumptions are all right, you know, we're talking like 3 cents this year and another 3 cents the following year. And I don't think that's a lot to ask, you know, users of the TTC. I don't mind paying 3 cents to know that I could hop off every now and then. I don't think I'm going to do it very often. I don't think a lot of people are going to do it very often, because if you're in that mode of transit where you're hopping on and hopping off and running errands, you probably already have a Metro Pass. So, you know, that's the logic behind the request, and I think it's a far better way to govern ourselves. To charge for this service is simply to ask the riders that are going to be using the service. With that, I'll take a question.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Perks, 3 minutes, clarification.
Yes, Speaker, could I get the second motion up, the one about the land transfer? Okay, Councillor, I just want to, I appreciate that you don't want to design the program on the fly, but on an overarching policy basis, would your intention be to move some of that money into capital and backfill the operating loss so we don't cut services, or would it be to cut services?
No, it's not a net change. It would be to connect the capital components of the budget on a larger scale. So I understand, I think it's only $40 million right now. And my suspicion is, if we talk to the CFO, it might be a bit healthier to have a larger band of capital associated with the MLTT. It still, I think, would be a net zero of the budget exercise.
So we would do something like reduce capital from current by an equivalent amount, or something like that?
I would let them figure out how to do the mechanics. There isn't any other intention in that other than to attach the MLTT to a different
Thank you. I may support this then. Thank you.
All right.
Councillor Carroll, questions?
Just quickly, Madam Speaker, I wonder if I could see the first motion regarding the TTC fare change. I'm wondering if this motion was moved in the context of the current situation the TTC finds it in, looking for ridership growth strategies. Are you aware that with ridership stagnating, although the population is growing, they're in a ridership growth situation, that fare elasticity is a problem? Does this take into account any of that context?
Yeah, the briefing note says that this would attract 1.5 million riders, this fare initiative. That's not the lens I used. I used the lens of who's gaining the service. They should be the ones that are paying the fare.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Mihevc to speak.
Oh my. Thank you. That was faster than I thought. I do have a four-part motion that are linked to the poverty reduction strategy. The first piece is around employment within our own city's fire department. If you've ever been to CDNR for the past 6 months, we've talked a lot about the need to do a review to make sure that people from our neighborhood improvement areas get some of the firefighter jobs. A systems review is necessary. That was actually in Appendix 3.4 as one of the asks. It wasn't funded yet, so this puts it in, but it's net zero, asking the fire department to find the resources from within. The second one is a Toronto Public Health program, an ambassador program to help vulnerable, to match professionals with youth in vulnerable communities. And frankly, it's very small dollars. The key there is that once the public health finds an alternative funding source, that pressure on our budget will disappear. The next two, I'd ask staff to keep putting it on so I can remember it. Oh, yes. One is the Swim to Survive. That's $154,000, Phase 4. So staff, in questioning during the budget process, indicated that they were able to do Phase 4, which would increase the number of people, number of grade 4 kids who would learn how to swim from 12,500 to 15,500. Why is this so important? Imagine living in a country where we have the 25% of the fresh water of the world, and yet not all of our children can swim. There was that terrible case of that young boy who died from not being able to swim. Guys, just hold on a sec. But not being able to swim, and this would this program would ensure that every grade, well, once it's fully phased in, all 22,000 grade 4 kids would be able to learn how to swim. Just 4 lessons. It's a very, very basic program. And the last one is around community benefits officer who would assist in the development of our procurement strategy and social benefits strategy. One of the things that in the, call it the anti-poverty movement, that folks are coming to recognize is that the first and strongest defense around anti-poverty is, as most of us around here, left, right, center, would agree, it's a job. It's a job. What do we have here at the City of Toronto by way of jobs? We have our own direct jobs, but we're major procurers of everything from nuts and bolts to sidewalk repair to construction jobs and so on and so on and so on. We need to use that procurement in a way that ensures that at least some of those jobs go towards apprentices and jobs for people in more marginalized communities. Metrolinx has done it along Eglinton with the Eglinton Connects project. Staff are doing it. This helps to speed up that work by adding that staff person this year as opposed to next year or the following year. It allows us to go a little faster on that piece of work so that we hit the ground in 2019 running. Those are the 4 amendments that I would urge you to support. The first 2 don't cost any money. The next 2 cost $150,000 and $50,000 respectively. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I do have a motion, and I think it's good news. I think the motion's been circulated. It's actually received $500,000 from the Department of Canadian Heritage, and this funds will be used to replace the roof of the St. Lawrence Centre, and the details as it's also to be used as well to supplement some work to be done at the Guild. The details in recommendation number 2. Speaker, I rise to support this budget, but I do so reluctantly. As you know, in the past, I would ask for the police portion of the budget to be separated. However, your ruling this morning prevents that from happening. It's my understanding in terms of how the clerk has explained the matter to me. So while I will support the budget, I simply wanted to address the issue as it relates to the police service budget, that I normally would not be supporting either the budget for the board itself nor the service and so on. And I won't get into the particulars of that, but it is that I do believe that more can be done and better can be done as it relates to that particular budget. As you know, I have spent a lot of time with this particular subject matter, and so I am supporting the Vision Zero. I'm supporting, the affordable housing aspects of the budget. I'm supporting, obviously, more funding for shelters, the TTC, roads. I may support Councillor Holliday's motion. I just have to review it a little bit further. I'm supporting the idea that we are going to provide more funding for student nutrition and so on. And there are a lot of things to this budget as it related to the correlation between last year's budget. I mean, there's not a tremendous variation, and we understand that. So there's no major service cuts associated with this budget. So our residents will benefit, obviously, from the services that they had last year. And at the same time, I know that there's folks who have asked for more, and unfortunately, there is a balance that has to be struck. I think this particular budget strikes that particular balance. Funding for public health and also the new staffing that is being added to this budget. And we've heard that it is not for senior staff who are going to get cars and other things like that in terms of the luxury. We've heard that from the city manager and so on. And so for those reasons, I can actually support this particular budget. I believe that the area in terms of transportation, and I gather that there'll be some more motions coming forward pertaining to that. I'm not sure. There's been some discussions around that. But at the end of the day, I'm happy to support most element of this particular budget, with the exception, as I've said, with respect to Clause 227 and Clause 229. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Cressy to speak.
Thank you, Speaker. And I'll begin by placing a few motions I have, which all of them have to do with allocating Section 37 funds through the capital budget process and are all cost neutral. And with that, let me just begin my remarks by thanking our City of Toronto staff across all the departments, divisions that have participated in this, and the budget chief, and every member of the budget committee. Whether we agree or don't, they all sit through a heck of a lot of meetings, and I want to thank them for doing that. I would start by acknowledging that as part of this budget, as compared to last year when I rose to speak, there have been some noticeable improvements, and I'll flag two. One on TCHC, that whereas last year TCHC was closing units, that we were actually closing down units in our housing stock, this year, due to an infusion of city funds that we are backing it up ourselves, those units are not closing. In fact, we are now repairing units. And I want to recognize that and note the work of Councillor Deputy Mayor Bai Lau on that front. And the other has to do with shelters. That whereas in the past, last year, in fact, we were having a big debate about whether or not to cut shelter staff, this year we are making critical and important investments to open more beds sooner. And I noticed Councillor Wong Tam's motion to speed that up, which I'm supportive of, and I also want to recognize the budget chief's support for those measures. And so on those two fronts, on shelters and TCHC, those are significant, and I would be unfair to everybody here not to acknowledge them and thank those. But on the whole, notwithstanding some of those significant investments, on the whole, this budget still makes life more unaffordable for Torontonians. And this has nothing to do with taxes being kept low. That I heard in my communications with my constituents at the joint town hall I hosted with Councillor Layton, I heard from my constituents that for the 181,000 people on the waiting list for affordable housing, this budget is still unaffordable. That for the 197,000 people on the waiting list for recreation budget, for the recreation list, this budget is still unaffordable. We might have added 20,000, but there's still 190,000 on the waiting list. That for the 12,000 people still waiting for childcare, notwithstanding the improvements we've made, that's still 12,000. This is unaffordable. And so, on so many metrics in the city, you could say, and we are, doing very well. But with rising poverty, this city's harder for the most vulnerable. And for renters and property owners, I would argue that the lack of access to city services is actually making it a lot harder to live here. And so it is not, and it is absolutely not taxes that are making this city unaffordable. It's the political fear of taxes that is making this city unaffordable. And as our city manager has noted, I think it's fair to say that the over-reliance we have on the land transfer tax in a period of real uncertainty right now is risky at best. And so we may now, in the late hours of this budget debate, be into the details and playing on the margins. And there are some margins here that are going to be helpful, and I'll be supporting a number of those. Councillor Fragadakis and Mihevik moved a bunch. But I desperately hope that next year, in the next term, that we'll have a little more courage in this council, that we'll actually make the investments that are going to improve the lives of Torontonians, as opposed to making the easy political decisions that we assume is going to make our elections easier. Because Torontonians deserve a lot better than that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Fletcher to speak.
Yes, Speaker, I'm just going to move that motion that I had earlier that I couldn't move under the Part 1, and that's just to look at making a pretty strong advocacy for 50% funding from the provincial government, going back to the days when just back to the day when this was the modus operandi of the TTC. We did not make one talking about our housing, but as I mentioned earlier, this was the way to really make sure that our transit isn't struggling and that people are not paying and paying and paying, and that we're having a hard time making the type of transit extensions, service benefits, service enhancements that people in Toronto really want. So I don't need to say too much more, but I will again, as others have, just thank everybody on the Budget Committee for all the work that they've done this year and bringing in this budget with so many enhancements that I think we're all looking for, particularly the Transform TO, and such an important program. I was disappointed last year when it wasn't funded, but I think we're on a good path. In my ward and across the city, people are really rising to the challenge of climate change. They're very interested, and our very exciting and vigorous program with hiring people to go out, let unleash the power of Torontonians to meet the challenge of climate change.
Thank you. 1 minute. Yes, very good, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Burnside.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just rise today to ask Council not to support Councillor Pasternak's motion 4C regarding the councillor offices, these satellite offices. We talk about making hard choices and squeezing every last dollar out of everything we do, but that includes us too. It's not just for our departments, it includes us. But it's worse than being somewhat hypocritical, in my opinion. It's also, what are the message we're sending? We're saying to people, we have no problem spending up to $17,000 a year per office, almost $200,000 collectively, when most of these offices, they aren't open 5 days a week. Half the time they're dark. So what we're saying is we have no problem spending $200,000 of your money to be open part-time. I think that's the wrong message. I think if we're ever asking all our departments to tighten their belts, we need to do the same.
Thank you. Councillor Layton.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. First off, I don't know, and I may have missed it, if we've haven't gotten the first is of what I'm sure there will be many accolades for our budget chief, Councillor Crawford, through this. I had the honor, and I'd like to thank Mary Tory, I had the honor of, and our striking committee, of serving with the budget chief for the last 3 years, save this last budget. And I just wanted to say how refreshing it was, how easy it was to approach the budget chief, and I think a genuine desire to try to find places where we agree, and find places where we could both say, yes, that's a good use of public funds, yes, that's a good investment. And I like to thank him for that, because while we could disagree, there was a willingness and a desire to find that common ground. That's not often the case in this chamber. And it'll be sad to see this last budget pass, and not have that opportunity to continue that working relationship with Councillor Crawford, perhaps going forward into the next term of council.
Sorry, Councillor Lane, I'm going to put your time on hold. There's so much noise. Please, members of council, staff.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I will, though, say that I have some trouble with how the budget was characterized at Executive Committee. And I did, kind of with my tongue in my cheek, made some comments earlier about how we used a fairy tale and a children's story to describe exactly what this budget represented. But I think you can't call a budget balanced, fair, or just right when you're borrowing from the future. That's just not balanced. It's short-sighted. And then holding the line on property taxes while we rely heavily on user fees is not fair. It only reinforces inequality and our divided city. And calling a budget where people are still sleeping out on the street as just right, that's just dead wrong. There's no hot or no too hot and no too cold for things like shelters. There's no investment that's too much when you talk about transit overcrowding. Except for perhaps if you look at the mode of transit that you're investing in, which could be vastly overbuilding. But in the case of our day-to-day work on transit, we need to look at it as it's not enough. We should be looking for more places to invest and lifting up every rock and looking in every pot of money from other levels of government. Unfortunately, though, often, and we're hearing this from our counterparts at Queen's Park, that unless we show that we're digging deep, unless we show them that we're willing to stick our necks out and help talk to our residents about the importance of raising revenue, of raising taxes, unless we do that, they're not going to come to the table with us. They're not going to put their necks out when we're not willing to do the same. And earlier, I talked about the mayor's famous Goldilocks speech, and I talked about half measures. Well, again, when we have the list of the waiting list for our affordable housing, the length that it is, and we're not prepared to make the necessary investment, that's a half measure. That's not just right. When we look at the list for child care subsidies, because people's monthly child care bills are over $2,000 for one child, that's not just right. When you look at the list for rec programs, so families can't enroll their children in swimming classes, in dance classes, seniors can't get into programming, that's not just right. So before we start patting ourselves on the back, before we start saying we've found that fair middle ground, let's look at those with the greatest need in our city, and let's evaluate whether we think it's either too hot or too cold for them. Because the budget's not just right when you have people sleeping outside and waiting for housing, and children and families that can't afford the child care that they're so desperately needing so that they can maintain working in the workforce and contributing to the greatness of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll to speak.
Yep, just coming, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm very grateful to all of the staff, particularly divisional staff that met with Budget Committee members. We don't make it easy for them. To meet the rules, we have to meet in little groups of two, never to achieve quorum, and we ask a lot of them in that regard. And I got the impression that it was a particularly soul-sucking exercise for them this year. They'd like to improve every year. They come to committees and they hear us deliberate over what would make things better, but they're asked to meet the target, and so they present a budget with nothing in it but the status quo and some more attrition, ever more attrition. And then we are the heroes who, using bridging strategies and one-time money, add back in those things, making them look kind of mean-spirited at launch. And I know that they know what are the things needed that are needed in their division. They'd include them themselves if we weren't so universal in setting targets. That being said, I thank them for that work, and here we are. I'm only going to speak to the two things that have been my focus based on committees I've been on. Councillor Pasternak has moved a motion to do with participatory budgeting. I dare say you'll probably pass it, but I do hope that what councillors will do is pay close attention to staff's recommendations about how to proceed with it when they bring a report in May. It is a very complex, rather time-consuming, and incredibly wonderful thing to do. But it is time-consuming. You won't be able to simply come back from the hustings December 1st and bam, do a process, lay it down with voted-on projects in a launch in January. But it is the future of helping communities to understand how it is we do what we do, why it costs what it costs. You won't have goofy articles like the staircase, the infamous staircase of last summer, once people have that kind of understanding of how we do small capital and how we spend money in their ward. Councillor Mammoliti said people were upset about why not our slide or swing set or whatever. In fact, participatory budgeting is the key to understanding that. But rather than go just on this and set off a chain reaction of Me Too-itis, take staff's recommendations in May that are after this budget process about how you will proceed with that in 1920 and beyond. The only other thing I will speak to is the police services budget. Toronto Police Services budget, I know that many have been lobbied. There's lots of rumors and carry on. One of my colleagues, Councillor Crisanti, asked a number of questions of concern. You are adopting a budget that for the third year in a row and for the first time ever since Shep was a pup, as my dad likes to say, we are able to flatline these budgets. And yes, there is attrition. And yes, the way we police is going to change. And so you should expect, it should come as no surprise that the police union is not happy about that. Generally speaking, if you change everything about an organization, if it wasn't the professional group or the labor group's idea, they're probably not going to be crazy about it. They didn't write that change. But it is a change that you should welcome. If someone is safe in their bed but they have a concern about something outside, we're modernizing such that they'll be able to say so on the internet. They'll be able to say so by calling 311. We'll be able to deal with the things where there are no victims, where we think it's a police concern but we're not sure. But the police officers that we will have, because we are modernizing, they will be able to respond to the crimes that we want them to respond to right now, in real time. That's what we want. But we are going through this period of time where I know that as budget approaches, I could hear it in my colleague Councillor Crisanti's questions. When people call, everything is prefaced with, well, we don't have the resources. But the reality is the squad car is going to drive by and look at that situation. The reality is every division is remodeling how they respond, but they are in fact responding, and the crime rates show it. They absolutely show it. And all you have to do is open the dashboard. One thing we've done to start this process is to make it more transparent so that you can simply refer them to the website if they need the confidence to adopt the police budget that's before you tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Shan to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also want to start off by thanking our staff for the work that they have done on the budget. Our budget chief, Councillor Gary Crawford, but more importantly, the residents who participated in giving their input, took the time and came to our budget consultation and gave their input. I'm going to be supporting this budget because I think this budget is about a vision of the city. I think this budget doesn't go far enough, but at least it signals where our city should be heading. It has everything in it bit by bit, but not far enough. But at least it is communicating to people that, you know, Vision Zero is important, that the pedestrian safety is an important investment to make. But it doesn't go far enough to speed it up in a way that we would like it to be. It is actually making TTC more affordable by making sure that we have the 2-hour transfer pass and the income-based transit fare. The shelter and housing investment that we are seeing is encouraging, though it doesn't go far enough. The library hours in my neighborhood, a lot of folks cannot go to the library, cannot take their kids to the library on a weekday because they get home probably around 8 o'clock from work. So weekend hours are very important. So a few more libraries being open in the weekend is amazing. Malvern getting a youth hub is an amazing thing to happen. To transform TO funding, which many activists who came here and advocated for a complete funding of it, is a proactive thing. One of my best pieces here is that for the first time that the City Council not only acknowledges anti-black racism exists, but actually puts money where the mouth is in investing. Not enough, definitely, but it's a significant investment towards not only creating programs for people in our city, but also looking at internally how best we can become more inclusive and how do we deal with anti-black racism even within our corridors of power. Student nutrition program, as a former teacher, I can be very proud that we are starting to look at more investment in this. So I would support the budget for these reasons, but I actually want to say that, you know, it is very important for us to keep things in perspective. You know, the report I talked about earlier from Social Planning Toronto that says promises, promises. In a you know $11.11 billion budget, $30-odd million would actually complete many of our promises made in that. So it's very important for us to make that extra step to make all of our commitment fully funded. And it's very important that we look at revenue tools, including taxes in addition to inflation. So I will be supporting some of the motions that are coming forward that makes this budget go far. One of the examples would be the 1,000 beds, Councillor Christine Wong-Tam's request to make sure that we find ways to speed up the process to get the 1,000 beds that we need for shelter. The other one is to you know, have participatory budget. The budget process, we've always come back and talked during budget process as to why this is inadequate. I think Councillor Wong-Tam's request for gender responsive budgeting and Councillor Pasternak's request for participatory budgeting are good ways for us to commit while we go through this process all day to say that we will be committing to improving the process as we move forward. What I won't be supporting is the motion by my good colleagues who wants to bring back the vehicle registration tax. I think vehicle registration tax is a regressive taxation. Even though you put in 65 plus in there are young people who need as much as the seniors, and some of the young people have less money than the seniors. So, you know, it's arbitrary kind of connections to hybrid vehicles, and 65 may not look at it as a way to make a vehicle registration tax more progressive. I think for us to make vehicle registration tax more progressive, we will have to make sure that we have a comprehensive understanding of it. The other thing I would like to stress finally is the concept of constituency office. I have a constituency office in Malvern, and it is frequented, it's open every day. In fact, it's also open during weekends, unlike the comments that was made about it being dark most of the time. Our young people are coming in to help with different projects, our residents are walking in, seniors are walking in. In fact, some parts of my ward, if I were to have the office in Scarborough Civic Center, the bus ride would be about 40 minutes. From the middle of my ward, the bus ride would be about 20 to 15 minutes to get to Scarborough Civic Center. So I think it's important for us to be more accessible. The money we spend at these offices are making more people come to us, see us, and get the help they need, and to be able to interact and be accessible to the population. Not all councillors may need it because their offices might be close enough, but we will definitely need it in our area.
Thank you. Councillor. Okay, Councillor Holiday? Councillor Holiday?
Finish the item or 9?
Finish the item. Finish.
All right, thank you, Madam Speaker. On a point of order, I'd like to move to extend to finish the item. We've got 7 on the list.
Recorded vote.
And the...
No, 9 o'clock. We'll be done by 9.
Okay, stop. And Councillor Holliday, that's also to pass the bylaws, right?
Pass the bylaw. We got to get it done. We got 7 on the list.
Okay, but we have...
Finish the agenda is what he meant.
Yeah, finish the agenda because Councillor Davis held an item down too.
Thank you. It's late, and that's correct.
All
So
right,
finish the
okay.
agenda.
No, it's not late. It's
Recorded vote to finish the agenda. This way you don't have to come back tomorrow.
Councillor Shiner, please. Councillor Wong-Tam, please.
Councillor Troisi, please.
Councillor Mallow, when you're seated, please.
Councillor Robinson, when you're seated, please.
Councillor Shiner, your vote, please.
The motion to extend the meeting to complete the agenda carries 32-9.
Yeah, just one sec, please. Okay. Councillor Davis?
Yes, I've had my questions answered, and I'd like to release EX 31.3, tangible assets.
Councillor Davis is releasing 31.3. On favor? On favor? Recorded vote. Now the staff can go home.
Oh, they're going to sit here anyway, I know.
No, they're fleeing. As fast as their legs will carry them.
Councillor Manalidi, please.
I hope you had a good time today. Does anybody know what the hockey score is? 1-0 Leafs? Okay.
The item carries 39-2.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now we'll continue. Councillor Wong-Tam, you're up to speak.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And if I can ask the clerks to put on the motions onto the screen. There are 5 of them, Madam Speaker. They were placed on top of everyone's desk in advance circulation almost 5 hours ago, so hopefully people had a chance to read them. I think they're fairly straightforward. The first one is a technical amendment moving some funds to a brand new affordable housing project in the local community that I serve. One of them, and the second one is probably going to want a little bit more scrutiny, and that's, of course, to reintroduce the vehicle registration tax, very similar to perhaps what Councillor Doucette has just done. I will be directing the funds to the TTC facilities, ALDA requirements, as well as the expansion of transit services in the inner suburbs, as well as backfilling the backlog of Toronto community housing. Motion number C is just basically a request for a report for more information regarding service levels, especially as it pertains to 311 calls in downtown Toronto, especially for the areas served by the 6 largest BIAs. They've been very impressed with the mayor's holiday blitz around downtown Yonge. They'd like to see if there's a way for them to sort of make sure the service levels for all of downtown Toronto is at a suitable level. Motion D, Madam Speaker, is the motion where I'm asking that we are going to direct additional funds from 2019 and 2020 to have those funds approved for the 1,000 brand new shelter beds, so that if staff are able to secure those sites, they'll have the money in hand to make those acquisitions, whether they are by purchase or by lease, which of course will fulfill the commitment from members of council who are on the executive committee, and even the mayor who signed the letter. We are very grateful for his support. And then motion E, Madam Speaker, many of you will recognize this before. It is the gender responsive budgeting motion, is to make sure that we put a gender equity lens over the budget process in the 2019 process moving forward. Madam Speaker, these are a lot of motions, and I want to thank clerks for their assistance and staff for their assistance in drafting each and every single one of them. I'm just going to focus my remarks now on probably just the one item that has taken up a lot of time and energy for the local community that I serve, but also for the advocacy of frontline workers, healthcare professionals, for the people who are homeless and street involved. This has been a very trying winter. And I want to say that for the frontline staff, including the staff who work at SSHA, including the general manager and all the supervisory staff and those in management positions, we need to tip our hat to you. This has not been an easy winter by any measurement. I think we have learned that the crisis around affordability in the city has come home to roost. There are more and more people living with less and less, and it is hitting us hard. What does hard look like? Well, we had 787 people sleep in some type of non-shelter facility as of February the 8th, which is the measurement date of last Friday. That's almost 800 people just randomly sleeping on mats and cots and whatever floor surface that may exist between the out-of-the-code program to the winter respite facilities that have now popped up just about everywhere. Staff can find those spaces. What's really interesting, Madam Speaker, is as quickly as we can open a winter respite, it becomes full. And Madam Speaker, the conditions are not friendly. They are not comfortable. They are actually not clean. They are very dangerous. And it's not because staff aren't doing a good job, because they certainly are, but we have not been proactive in the planning, and because we have been reactionary all winter long, it meant that we were moving things in a somewhat clumsy manner. Don't take it personally. I want everyone to understand this is not a judgment on staff and their performance, but it is something that we as council have got to own, that if we're going to do this, we have to do this together. There is no other way around this. We are going to break this summer. The summer break is going to be 6 months long. Our last meeting is in July, and we will not reconvene as a council of the whole until 2019, January, February. And at the very first meeting that we will have, the issue around the shelters will be before us again. Why? Is because we will have in the preliminary budget, and the executive committee adopted budget, not enough money to build 1,000 new permanent shelter beds. We're just not going to be able to do it, which means that if staff are successful, and we wish them to be successful, and we are going to have to help them find these facilities, if they find those facilities, they need to have the dollars to secure them. And they cannot wait 6 months, 6 precious months, including the winter months as we head into 2019, and not be empowered to do their job. So we do not want to be, Madam Speaker, in the same position that we were in this winter. God forbid if it happens again. I know we can do better, Madam Speaker, because we've already learned so much. The faith community has come out in a number of press conferences. We've had doctors and nurses and health practitioners from all walks of life. We've had movie stars and actors and directors and authors, and just about everyone was telling us, Toronto City Council, you can do better. And Madam Speaker, by way of adopting this motion, I think we will be doing better and hopefully empowering staff to do the job that they need to. Madam Speaker, I'm going to save my final comments around gender-responsive budgeting. I've mentioned that I've moved a similar motion in 2016, 2017, and I'm doing it again in 2018. For whatever reason, Madam Speaker, the work is not being done at the staff level. And if we're going to want to build an equitable budget that's going to be open, transparent, and accountable and fair, then we're going to have to do the heavy lifting when it comes to equity. Otherwise, we talk about equity, we talk about access and inclusion, and we're not delivering it. The best way to deliver it, Madam Speaker, is through the budget. The budget is the apex of all policy tools, the very top-level policy document, and without it being allocated in the budget, it just won't get done. And I hope that we don't just adopt it, but when the adoption of this motion is successful, we will be able to implement it.
Thank you, Councillor Wong-Tam.
Thank you very much, Madam
Actually,
Speaker.
you had a little extra time because I didn't put your time on. So.
Okay.
So, thank you. Councillor Perks.
Thank you, Speaker. There have been quite a few motions moved, and many of them I will be supporting, including, incidentally, the one Councillor Holliday is moving on the land transfer tax. Something that variable, I think, is better suited to our capital budget than the operating services that we need to deliver year after year. But I wanted to address myself principally to the motions in the area of TTC overcrowding and Councillor Wong-Tam's motions on the affordable housing crisis we're having in the City of Toronto. The very first day of this budget process, we got a slide presentation from the City Manager, which showed that per capita, Torontonians receive less services now than they did 8 years ago. And in response to a question from Councillor Mihevik, the dollar value, the total aggregate dollar value of that is $500 million. For 8 years, we've been ratcheting down and ratcheting down and ratcheting down the level of service we deliver. And it has completely predictable consequences. Because we are spreading the same number of dollars over a growing population, the amount of services available to each individual Torontonian is reduced. As our population grows and as the demands on housing grow and the price of real estate climbs, then people at the low end of the housing market particularly are getting squeezed. You heard the answers that Mr. Gadden gave when I was asking about what's happening at that lowest end in price-wise of our rental market. We are losing units faster than we are building them. The private market will never build units for that without public subsidy, and we are not offering public subsidy fast enough to be able to replace the units that are out there. What that means to those of us who represent wards where a number of people at the lowest end of the income spectrum live is that we spend an awful lot of evenings going to meetings with people who are being legally evicted and who ask us, where can we go? Where can I get another bachelorette unit at $600 a month? And we have to say, there is no such thing. They then ask us, well, where do we go? And I mean, you know, there are some programs we have, rent banks and so on and so forth, but those are temporary programs. They don't actually bridge the gap. The real answer is many people go into our shelter system. They were housed and now they are not housed, or they leave Toronto. All of that was predictable. We have watched ourselves deliberately create that Toronto with 8 consecutive years of budgeting to help people who own their own homes only have to pay at inflation or in some cases below. It was a deliberate choice. We chose to create that crisis. We've seen a lot of headlines lately about the problems with overcrowding in the TTC. Again, that's a consequence of choices made by this administration and the previous one. Sure, we've opened the subway early on Sundays and let kids ride for free, and now we're talking about hopping on and hopping off. But you know what we're not doing? We're not actually spending money in a way that attracts people to public transit. If those measures were actually effective, our ridership, Mr. Mayor, I see you shaking your head, would not be flat. With 35,000 people a year moving into the City of Toronto in areas our official plan says are transit supported, we would be seeing an increase in ridership, TTC staff said, of about 5 million riders a year, probably more. That's 20 million rides we're short over your term of office, Mr. Mayor. And that's the result of deliberately not doing the one thing that would attract people to transit, which is to run more service. And that's the result of 8 years of not buying more vehicles, of not getting garages built on time, delaying and delaying and delaying. Councillor Fragadakis has an option. I hope you'll all support it. If you talk to TTC staff, they'll say, yes, we're fleet constrained in the morning peak, but we have a little bit more room in the afternoon peak. And as we get more buses, there are some being delivered, we can reduce the spare ratio and help backfill that. We're providing worse services because of deliberate choices that we've been making year after year at this council. It's time to stop.
Thank you. Councillor Bailao.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do have a motion, and it's a request that money that was obtained during a settlement for cleanup costs of a specific site be directed to that site. So we've received the money. Some money was to pay the legal costs of the TTC, and this money needs to be awarded to clean up this site. I also want to thank the Budget Committee, Budget Chief, and staff for what is an incredible amount of work that is put through this budget. When we talk for a day or two here, we literally are talking about, you know, 10, 20, 30 million dollars, but the reality is that the bulk of the work has already been done by the Budget Committee and staff with input for those that participate. I do want to talk about a few items that a few councillors have already mentioned in this budget, which is really the TCHC part of this budget. For the first time ever since amalgamation, this City Council has acknowledged that it has a role to play in managing and actually taking responsibility for the backlog that this corporation has. It is the first time in our budget that we have a line item for Toronto community housing. We've secured mortgages, we've facilitated, we've financed the mortgages, but now we're actually directly impacting this. Last year, we had 18% increase in the operating budget of TCHC. We maintained that operating budget. We now have a line item in the capital repair backlog in our operating, in our capital budget, and we are putting together a special task force with Toronto Fire Services to tackle the Toronto community housing. So I am proud of the work that we're doing here, because finally we are saying we have a role to play in housing. We've done it through the shelters, as it was mentioned in here, and with motions that are going to see that work being sped up. We've done it through TCHC. We've done it through programs like the Open Door and putting up sites for sale that for the first year, this year, we've been able to approve 1,200 units. But these issues cannot be solved on the back of property taxes alone. I was just taking a look at a slide 64 in the presentation, and I think I would be Toronto West, so an average home resident in my area pays $4,800 of property taxes. If land transfer tax had not been introduced 9 years ago, they would have been paying 25% more in taxes. They would have been paying over $6,000 today if that land transfer tax was not introduced. Madam Speaker, I'm going to be supporting Councillor Matlow's motion, because I think we will have that conversation later on about the new revenue tools. But if we really want to solve the issues of housing, of transit, of issues that is of the magnitude of the city that we have today, we cannot keep thinking that by increasing, being from 2.1 to 2.9 or 4%, we are not going to solve those issues. It is not an increase of 0.5% that is ultimately going to solve also these issues, because we need progressive revenue tools That's what we need as well. We need not only to have the property taxes, not only to have the land transfer tax, but we need to have a diverse set of tools that actually respond to what the city is today. We are one of the largest cities in North America, working with the tools of the city of 300,000 that we had a few decades ago. And that's why when we come here and talk about budgets, we can only talk about another million here, another million there. Because the reality is we don't have the tools that we need to build the city that we want and that we need. Can we increase another 0.5%? Yes, we've created the building fund. We created the hotel and short-term rental fund. We created the billboard tax. And we need to continue to have the conversation in order to build the housing that we want, the transit that we want, and the city that we want. And that's why I will be supporting several motions that are here in front of us today to continue the work that I believe Budget Committee did. Motions like Councillor Fragadakis did, motions like the one that Councillor Wong Tam had on the shelters. I think this is conversations that have been having with councillors, with the Budget Chief, and everybody is in agreement that they need to move forward.
Thank you. Councillor Hart.
I will be brief. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the Budget Chair and the Budget Committee on an excellent job. I understand, after being involved myself in budgets around this place for over 30 years, how much work goes into preparing the budget. I've heard some councillors talk today about new strategies that have been employed in this budget to balance the budget, like pulling rabbits out of a hat. I can tell you, I didn't hear any strategies in this budget that I haven't heard before. I don't know where the idea of new strategies are coming from, but they certainly don't exist in this budget. I've also heard people talk about we're not making necessary investments or the budget isn't going far enough. Well, I can tell you, since 1985, when I did my first budget, no budget goes far enough. You can never satisfy everything that you need to do in a city, but you have to look through two lenses. You have to look at the services that you deliver, and you have to look at the tax rate that you're going to give your citizens. When you balance both of those things, I think this budget has gone a long way to satisfy the needs of Torontonians. You know, I look at the list of new and enhanced. There's $54 million of new and enhanced in this budget. Somebody can correct me, but I don't recall any budget that's been before this council that had $54 million of new and enhanced. If there is, I'd love to hear about it. I don't remember any of them. So well done, and I'm supporting a few of the motions before us, but by and large, I'm supporting the budget before us today. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor De Beermaker.
Minute 32. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have two motions, if clerks can put them up on the screen. So first motion is that City increase the operating budget by $0.192 million, funded by the Tax Rate Stabilization Reserve, and that we Council delete recommendation 201 so that the current constituency services and office budget policy for telecommunications expenses and newsletter entitlement remain unchanged. That was a motion I think I moved last year and was endorsed by Council. And my second motion move that the City increase the capital budget for facilities, real estate, environment, and energy in the amount of $325,000 to increase the total project cost from $520 to $845 for the project known as Ward 38 705 Progress Improvements in support of the South Asian Autism Awareness Center to provide the necessary capital repairs and improvements that would allow for occupancy of Unit 63 funded through the reserve account XR2007. Just to speak briefly to those two before I address I guess our larger budget, if councillors were here when I asked questions of staff, in terms of the Autistic Center, Council has approved $500,000 to retrofit an old industrial building in Scarborough for the Autistic Center to move in. The Autistic Center provides services to over 400 children and their families that are dealing with autism. Staff said to me that they would normally do it through a variance report, but because the project will be finished before they can get to Budget Committee and Council, they said that I had to move that motion today, so I'm moving that motion today. The second motion that talks about keeping the current constituency services and office budgets for phones and printing. Just allows those of us councillors who want to send out newsletters to our residents, who want to continue to communicate with them as much as possible, that we're able to do that. And if you happen to go on a conference with FCM or somewhere in Europe, that if there are extra roaming charges on your cell phone, that be taken from the general budget. So those are the two motions I'm putting forward. Madam Speaker, I think what I've noticed when I came forward to this meeting is most of us are focusing, of course, on 2018. But for me, this is the last budget we're going to pass together as a council. Some of us may move on to the provincial government. Some of us may retire. Some of us may get beaten in the next election. But this council, I think, has a lot to be proud of. And I just started going through some of the old budget presentations by staff. And first I want to talk about new buses. If you live out in the suburbs, if you live in Scarborough, most of what you see and most of what you get around is a bus. And 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, when you look at the buses we've ordered and purchased, then 880 more buses are on the road today than, 500 more buses today than we had when we first started. By the end of 2018, we'll have 880 new buses because of this council and a little bit because of the council before us, 880 more buses at the end of this year than we had just 4 years ago. And in 2019, if you will, baked into this budget is ordering 260 buses in 2019 for a total of over 1,140 new buses. And buses are the way most of us in the city get around. Wheel-Trans, in 2017 we got 50 new buses, and in 2018 we're ordering 65 new buses. So there will be, at the end of this budget cycle that we approved today, 80 new Wheel-Trans buses that didn't exist 3 years ago. Better service to more people. In terms of streetcars, and we all groan when we talk about the streetcars, but up until this year, at the end of this year, 2017, we've received 60 new streetcars, and if all goes well, we will, by the end of 2018, because of the work that this council has done, 120 new streetcars. We've got, in 2017, we put in Wi-Fi into 52 new stations. This year, we have 2-hour transfers. We have frozen fares for our riders, and we're addressing bus crowding and talking about the fare pass system. So when I look at that last number of years of what we've done, I think we can all be very proud. And whether it's doing that, whether it's hiring new paramedics, new firefighters, putting $5 million into the arts and culture program. That was in 2016. You might say, why are you talking about something we did in 2016 when it's 2018? Because sometimes we forget how good we are and how good this council has been to the people of Toronto. The people today in the arts and culture community are getting $5 million more today in grants than they did just 3 years ago. When I look at the affordable child care spaces, if my memory is correct, I think every single budget we've passed has included more subsidies and more spaces for child care. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor McMahon to speak.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And people have talked about all the great things we're doing with the budget, and I will just emphasize what we're doing with our Transform TO. And before I do that, I will talk about the trees and just say that people haven't spoken about the trees. Who's speaking for the trees? I will, because Glenn usually does. But we are, people should know that we are, of course, investing in our tree canopy. We're expanding it and we're maintaining it, which is the key thing, because we don't want to just plant these trees and leave them. So that doesn't help. So that should be noted. And with Transform TO, we are fully funding our climate change action plan. So let's stick to that fact. And what we're doing is we're advancing all our approved strategies and our 3 accelerated strategies, which are mobilizing low-carbon neighborhoods, our workforce development for high-performance buildings, and exploring the implications and opportunities with electric vehicles. We are hiring 27 new people this year and 10 in April 2019. On the 27 this year, there are 12 in April coming up and 15 in July. The 12 in April will be doing things such as they'll be working with the Better Building Partnerships and helping out with retrofits of private sector buildings. which is what Better Building Partnerships does. Also, energy conservation demand management, and our HELP program, our home energy loan program, that Councillor Layton is always happy to, was partially his idea. And also continue to support advancement of all the strategies, Transport and TO, stakeholder engagement, and neighborhood outreach, because we know it can't just be top-down with environmental initiatives. We need to build that momentum and nurture the grassroots communities who can reach out to the communities better than we can, and our low-carbon thermal network. So 27 new people hired this year, 10 in 2019, fully funded Transform TO, and we've also received $350,000 from the province for energy efficiency and local housing. All right. So that is something to brag about. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shiner to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's getting a little late in the evening, and I've listened to my colleagues all day long. Those that want to add more, those that want to tax more, those that want to spend more, and those that want to cut more. And I say to you that this is a very difficult budget for me, inasmuch as much of what's in here is the same as we've done before. Finding ways to continue to get a deal, something that kind of works, addresses the problems everywhere, and then throwing everything in that we really wish and dream that we could do. But we don't give any real direction as to how we're going to get there. Because we can look at those things if we find ways to have more efficiency within our organization. But every time you look at that and we look to the city manager, everybody's afraid it means layoffs or cuts. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It means doing ways smarter, using our resources better, allowing new technology to come in, better decision making. Think about it. 20 years ago we amalgamated, and we're still running 4 separate districts. Many of them don't know what the other ones do. You look at a park and you talk about a playground, and North District will say, we never have that equipment, but South District gets installed. Out in the West End, things are dealt with one way different from the East End. Building permits come in, 4 districts. And yet it's all electronic now. Do you have to have staff in each district? Can we be more efficient in what we do? Can we be smarter? Because if we can be smarter, then we can do better. But what we're doing now is looking at every dollar we can get through the land transfer tax, which scares the daylight out of me because we know it's going to come to an end. Looking at ways to use reserve accounts, defer different types of capital expenditures or payments into our capital accounts. It's all the things we've done before. And we haven't allowed our staff to show us how to do it better. Because I know them. And they know how we could do these things better, but they need direction from us as a council. So I look at a budget over here, and the question came to me when I saw all that at Executive Committee, what are we doing? And I heard the mayor talk about a story about the 3 bears. One too hot, one too cold, one just right. My problem is that the porridge may be just right, but the cupboard's bare. We don't have anything else we can take out of the cupboard for more porridge. We have used every single possible resource we could do to get the cereal onto the table. And unless we find ways to do things better, we're going to be in a big problem in the future. And let me tell you, people cannot afford to pay more taxes. I said it earlier today. They can't afford higher tax rates. They can't afford to pay that much more that you all think. The average household in the city, 680,000 households, are valued at less than $1 million for assessment purposes. We don't have all these wealthy people sitting there. Only 96,000 are more than $1 million, and only 15,000 are more than $2 million. So when you raise the residential tax rate, you're really hurting those people that you want to help the most. So it concerns me. And it concerns me that we're continuing to do this. And I say to you and ask of you, as you said, it's the end of a term. As a council, we have to find ways to get a message together, to decide what our priorities are, to allow the city manager and the staff to understand the highest to lowest priorities, to give them some direction as to what they can do, to go through the way we do business and see how we can do it smarter and better, and then come back with a plan to address those that don't depend upon revenues that may not be there, such as the land transfer tax in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis to speak.
Thank you, Speaker. I have 3 motions. They are revised. The first one is to essentially take the operating funding that has been allocated to a capital project, which is the Anishwabe Child Care Centre, and use the Child Care Capital Reserve to fund that capital project this year, and use the funding that is in the operating budget to add an additional 140 new child care fee subsidies so that it is a net neutral because it provides the necessary offset. The second motion, if I could have it on the screen. Could I have, the second motion calls on the provincial government to give us additional funding to address childcare affordability. They have told us they're going to do this, and yet we have not seen any money to address affordability so far. And the third motion asks the city manager, when he is bringing forward his report that is the long-term financial direction report, financing strategies, the IMIT report, that he also bring forward the multi-year plans, service plans and strategies that we have approved over the last couple of years. Colleagues, I do want to say at the offset, which I didn't have the opportunity last time, to also extend my thanks to everyone involved in the budget process. I want to thank the Chair, Gary Crawford, and the rest of the committee members for always giving me the opportunity to be present and ask questions. I wish they were more inviting when it came to motions. However, so while the door is open, it's often shut, I'm afraid, for those of us who want to see motions move forward to Executive and Council. So here we are. I do want to say that this budget, from the time it was proposed and to what is appearing before us today, has been improved significantly. There are all of the new and enhanced that were excluded from the budget have been added. We've added additional shelter beds. We have expanded and provided TTC the 2-hour pass. There are a number of improvements that are in this budget. And I'm very pleased. It will benefit many people in the city. We've done it through a variety of ways, and one of the things, of course, is that we've drawn heavily on the MLTT, and I know that everyone is quite worried about that, as I am. We've seen assessment growth, huge assessment growth. We've benefited once again from the provincial upload, $22 million this year. For childcare loan, we got 56 plus another 22 million from the provincial government. We relied on supplementary taxes, a hotel tax, and I want to give the mayor credit for pushing through on the hotel tax, as well as the commercial vacancy rebate program. So this has been often the way we do budgets. We cobble them together. What remains, however, as a characteristic in this budget, as others have in the past, is that there were still $59 million of unsustainable bridge financing in this budget. So we have to solve the problem of the base budget. And it has, over the last 10 years I've been here, gotten smaller and smaller, that gap. But we need to solve that problem. And we haven't. The one thing that we were able to do on the capital side, and that was from the provincial gas tax, is that we've been able to smooth out the capital program, and we found $1 billion more of debt room to finance the capital budget. But one of the things that we must recognize is that this continues to be, in general, a status quo budget. We have tried over the years to respond to the growing needs and the growth in population, but we have not done it. So we need to both build a sustainable budget for the future, we need to respond to the needs and the growth in our city, and we do have to talk about raising our property taxes, which still fall far, far below the majority of tax rates across the province of Ontario.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Cole to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will not be moving a motion today. I will be supporting, of course, Commissioner and Councillor Fragadakis' motion to add the additional $2 million to address overcrowding issues. I will not be supporting Councillor Holliday's motion to have a fair increase pay for the time-based transfer. I think on that point it's obvious why we're doing that, not only to make transit more affordable, but we're trying to encourage ridership and grow ridership, and that's the rationale behind doing that. Increasing the fares won't do that. This is a good news transit budget. There is no doubt about that. If you think about what we're all hopefully going to pass in a few moments, maybe, a few hours, this budget will include those time-based transfers. It's going to include a fair pass for lower-income Torontonians. It's including the $1 million for overcrowding, plus then the other $2 million that Commissioner and Councillor Fragadakis has moved. It's going to increase net new dollars to the operating budget for the TTC over last year's. It includes a ridership growth strategy that sets the blueprint and groundwork for growing ridership. And this is all with a fare freeze. So I think if you were to tell anyone that going into a budget process, they'd probably think it was not possible, but yet this is what's happening, this is what we're going to approve. On top of it, we are actually approving on the capital side hundreds, again, of new buses, a new bus garage, the first one that's been built in a decade at least or more, certainly the first one that's been approved in much longer than that. We're going to continue with all the state of good repair work, and yes, we had a terrible week the other week at the TTC, and we had a terrible day. And you know, people are citing why did that happen? Well, one of the reasons it's happened is because we let our system to rot for 20 years. When you don't replace switches and pumps and vents, those things that maybe aren't that exciting for people, and you can't do a ribbon cutting around, that's what happens. But the good news is that work's been done over the last 3 years, and it's being done in this budget. And so that's why when people complain, unfortunately, about a subway closure on the weekend, it's because we're finally doing that work after years and decades of neglecting it. That's why we're finally replacing the signal system. And so this budget, on top of the hundreds of new buses, building a bus garage, all that good state of good repair work, is also going to see the ATC finally kind of get to the finish line, which will be a huge improvement for anyone who uses the Yonge line. It actually has 6 new subway stations that will fully be operational, a new subway line running. It's not often that you're paying for that in a new budget, but we're offering that too. And on top of it, we continue to expand and roll out the Presto system. So this is a good news budget for transit. It's a good news budget for anyone who uses the TTC because it makes it more affordable, it makes it more convenient, it makes it safer. And so I think that as we pass today on both the capital and operating side, we'll address a lot of long-standing issues that we're trying to get around and get over, and so that we can improve service, improve safety, improve reliability, and our riders and our customers will see that with the investments we're making in this budget. So again, I will be voting for the budget and supporting it. It is a good news transit budget. I'll be supporting Commissioner and Councillor Fragadakis' motion to address crowding with the extra $2 million that our TTC staff will look into and see how they can spend that money. And again, I will not be supporting Councillor Holliday's motion, but this is a budget that's good news for Toronto residents. It's good news for transit riders. It's good news for the people who have been calling on for years to address the problems and the issues that we haven't been addressing. And so I think we should move forward and celebrate these investments in transit. There are always more to be made. More will be made, but this is an excellent budget for transit. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I do want to thank some people for the incredibly hard work that has happened over the last number of months. Our staff, who I've had a great pleasure of working with in all the divisions, all the agencies, but in particular...
You have a motion.
Oh, you're right, I do. Sorry about that. Then I will read the motion. That City Council amend the 2018 to 27 capital budget and plan for parks, forestry and recreation by adding a new capital sub-project known as the Ward 38 Improvements 2018 sub-project and the Park Development Project costing $790 with cash flow of $70 in the 2018, $720 in 2019. This is coming from the Parkland Acquisition East District Local Reserve, and it's to support Centennial Recreation at Thompson Park. The second one is similar. But it's for Ward 38 park improvements. In the Park Development Project, $100,000. It's also coming from the Parkland Acquisition East District Local Reserve Fund. And number 3, that City Council increase the 2018 to 27 capital budget and plans for park, forestry and recreation by $150,000. And that is being funded from the Parkland Acquisition West District Local Development Reserve Fund to undertake improvements at Earls Court Playground. Back to my thanks. I want to thank our staff all across the city, divisions and agencies, and of course our finance staff that I've had the opportunity to work with over the last number of years on the work that they've been doing. Budget committee members, of course, an incredible amount of work happens in the budget. If you've been on the budget committee in years past, you understand the commitment and the work that's involved in that, so I want to thank them. And of course, all of the councillors who participated in this process for coming out, for asking you questions, for listening, and for trying to move motions, not all of them getting bought through, but I want to thank them for coming. And of course, the public. We were out all across the city. We made the commitment at the beginning of this term to reach out all across the city to speak with residents on their priorities, and I'm glad that we had that opportunity to do that. I also want to thank Mayor Tory for his leadership and setting an incredible tone for the budget, and I think City Council over the last 4 years. And I also want to, I have to say, it's been an honor, it's been a privilege being the budget chair, budget chief for the last 4 years. I can tell you one thing, you do learn a lot about how the city is run. If anybody is involved or has been involved, and there are a few former budget chiefs in the room here, you really get a sense of how the city runs, how it works. We have had some great times. It's been a little challenging at times, and I've had a few moments, but I think overall it's been a great opportunity for me. As Councillor Cole said, this is a good news budget, not only for transit, but I think for all residents across this city. We started the process at a much better pace with staff when they brought us a balanced budget, and we worked hard to get that. They worked hard to get that to where we are at. And as the budget chief, again, 4th year in a row, we've had a property tax increase that has been at or below the rate of inflation. And it helps keep the city affordable for the residents of Toronto. Now, despite holding line on taxes, we have also invested in a lot of services, and we've talked about a lot of the investments, over 50, actually I think it's going to be up to $54 million in new investments that are going to be coming forward. Police officers, bus drivers, hop-on, hop-off 2-hour transfers, transform TO. We are supporting the full poverty reduction 2018 commitment. There's shelter beds, there's childcare spaces, there's lots here that we're going to be supporting. Vision Zero, of course, more money for the AG. We've achieved everything that we wanted to achieve. Most of the commitments that have come through council this year are in this budget, and we have achieved them. As I said, it's a good news budget. It invests in key areas while keeping taxes low and keeping spending at a very good rate with lots of investments. Our residents want to build the city, but they also appreciate that we strike the right balance, that we tighten spending, find efficiencies, but we don't have taxes that are high. And again, thank you very much for the honor and privilege to serve as your budget chief, and I will be supporting a number of the motions here, not all of them, and I believe the mayor probably mentioned a few that we'll be supporting. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have questions for you. Oh, Councillor Perks, point of Order?
Speaker, on a point of order, before I'm able to ask the Budget Chief questions on his motion, I need some advice on part number 3. Part number 3, what it attempts to do is take money out of the Parkland Acquisition Fund and spend it simply on improving play equipment within an already existing park. As you know, Speaker, these are fees that we levy from development applications, and they're legally constrained to certain purposes. I've just checked, and I don't believe we have ever used this money in this way, and I think it opens the city up to liability with every single development application we have ever had, because those fees were paid with a legal purpose in mind. So before I'm able to ask the Budget Chief questions on this part of the motion, I'm going to need some advice from, I don't know, legal or planning staff about this use of this fund, which I think violates the law.
Okay, so Councillor Perks, why don't you go over and ask staff why the other members are asking questions? Yeah, you can go to the legal department, legal, and ask that question. Councillor, she's over there. Councillor Burnside, do you have a clarification of a motion?
Yeah, I do.
3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Something seems a little bit fishy here. Councillor, through you to Councillor Crawford, I just want to clarify, you're not in Ward 38?
No, I'm not. I'm in Ward 36.
Okay. Okay, that's the first thing that seems a little off, but okay. Second question. This is, we're taking money, you want to take money from the acquisition fund, as Councillor Perks mentioned, for a park improvement. I'm not, because I can't ask staff, do we not have a budget for improving our parks?
Yes, I do believe we do have that, Councillor.
But we're not going through that process, I guess, with this.
On part 3, I do want to let you know that I am moving this on behalf of Councillor Palacio. That is his ward. Now, it's not mentioned there, but I just want to know that that's moving that on his behalf.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is, my memory's not great, but are these similar to what was at Budget Committee?
Yeah, part 1, part 2 are, I believe, identical to what was moved in budget on behalf of Councillor DeBearmaker.
I think they must have
now
lost.
I'm fairly
okay,
close.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll, clarification of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do need clarification. Madam Speaker, through you to the Chair of the Budget Committee, in our final budget wrap-up, Part 3, in any case, we voted down because we have never had a staff report on this, nor even heard from the local councillor to date. I still haven't had either of those things. Are you moving, and we therefore voted it down? I still have never, these are the first times I've seen Parts 1 and 2. Do you have information about these that the rest of us don't have?
No, Councillor, I don't. I have the same information that you would have. Again, yes, you're right. They were voted down at Budget Committee. Just reintroducing them here at Council on behalf of the councillors.
So would it be, to clarify, could I take that to mean that you're agnostic on the outcome of this motion?
Well, Councillor, as what I will say is I did move them in budget. I have moved them here, and when I do move motions, I do support them, so I will be supporting this motion.
But you have no more information than we had when we were in wrap-up?
No, I do not.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying. Yeah.
Clarification of the motion?
So, if I understand this, number 1 is to add $790,000 in 2018 and 19 using the parkland acquisition for various improvements. So this was not in the capital budget, or it was in the capital budget, and this is expanding an existing capital project?
My understanding would be is that it was not in the capital budget, and we are looking to introduce it here.
It wasn't in the capital budget?
That's my understanding, no.
Is this the way we all can bring things forward at the 11th hour?
Well,
Bring them to you?
I'll go on past experiences, Councillor. I've seen many motions that have come in here in the 11th hour, and I've seen many motions, and there's many of them here that I wasn't even privy to myself as the budget chief.
Okay. So the second one is another adding of 100,000 to an existing project?
Yes, going from 1.2 million to 1.3 million. Now, $1.2 million has been approved. There's an extra $100,000 that is needed to finish the project.
Well, it's very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's supposed to be
I think that, you know, we have the clarification so far. Councillor Perks?
Thank you, Speaker.
Like,
I have consulted, and that'll be the basis of my questions. So these funds that you're allocating come out of the land acquisition reserve, which is generated when we get a development application. Typically, we would want them to offer us land. We require that, and when they're not able to provide us with land, we get cash in lieu, which is generally used for the purchase of new land. I've just checked with staff, and while we aren't specifically legally constrained, are you aware that we have never done this in any previous budget?
Councillor, I'm not aware of that, no.
Thank you.
Councillor Anchimeri, clarification?
Yes, because I'm very confused. I don't understand why you're doing this. Could you please explain why the councillor didn't move the motion?
Councillor, I can't attest to why the individual councillors move the motions. I do, and I have in my role moved numbers of motions for councillors on their behalf, and this is what I am doing here, moving 3 motions on the behalf of 2
Speaker, through
councillors.
you, is this a fund that ought to be going into that ward? For example, like the one Councillor de Bearmaker moved about his?
You're talking about the third part of that?
Was this earmarked for that ward?
Unfortunately, I can't answer that question right now. As I said, I am moving this on behalf of a councillor, Councillor Palacio. So unfortunately, I can't answer that question for you.
Councillor Palacio to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First and foremost, I want to thank the city budget and the chairman of the budget, Councillor Crawford.
Do you have a motion?
No, I don't.
No.
Is for moving that motion, and the purpose of that motion that was moved, it was at the budget committee, and that motion was in consultation with the city staff. Now, I want to take this opportunity to thank city staff as well as the budget committee and the budget chief for doing an excellent job, and more than anything else, for bringing something so substantial, for something that's also a thankless job. This budget, in my opinion, has 2 tails. The first one is here we have a healthy and a strong budget with a very healthy social infrastructure, with a huge investment like never before. And I'll speak to that, and also in terms of public transit. So there are good news from that perspective. This budget is very unique like never before. It contains more than $50 million in new services and enhanced investments. The city is investing in key areas. More shelter beds are open. More child care subsidies will be available for families. More student nutrition programs and funding more than ever before, and recreational service. I'm very glad also that we have the 2-hour hop-on and hop-off transfer system with the TTC. And this is a pilot project that initiated in Ward 17 during the construction of the exclusive right-of-way on St. Clair. And I'm very glad that this very program is going to be expanded all throughout the city. That's going to help in terms of revitalization for our commercial strips, for businesses, but for more than anything else, for our transit users. And on that, I really want to thank those who are following the debate, especially my local BIAs on St. Clair, as well as my ratepayers groups, that they promote it and they work hard all throughout to get this going. This is not a question about how we spend and how we prioritize. It's very clear that this budget enhances the social and cultural infrastructure of this city. It has put tenants first, the homeless, in terms of the homeless, we have prioritized them. In terms of poverty reduction, we are prioritizing them as well. So it's a good budget from that perspective. But I do have serious concerns with the physical infrastructure of the city, especially the state of good repair. The funding gap keeps on growing. The backlog stands at $2.2 billion, and if nothing is done, it will grow to $3.6 billion within the next 10 years. And that's something that to think about it. Our underground infrastructure, such as sewage systems, water pipes, our bridges, sidewalks, have to be prioritized as well. Otherwise, it will cost much more than to fix later. We all know what happened with the state of good repair with the Toronto Community Housing. Because of the lack of funding and the lack of management in the past, thousands of social housing units are permanently closed. And that's totally unconscionable, that's unacceptable, and that leaves a lot to be desired. With regards to the motion that the budget chief put it before you, it has to do with Earls Court Park, and that's part of the state of good repair. It's a playground that has to be installed. City staff called a public meeting, and the community, we had a great turnout, and the community came forward and they said, this playground is too small. The area has gentrified a lot. We have thousands of families there, and we need a larger playground for the kids. And that's what it is. And what city staff said is, we have this number of dollars. If city council, through the budget process, could allocate an additional amount, and then we can complete the playground. If you don't want to vote for the kids, for the families, for people who need it, this is an area that's in a neighborhood improvement area with people in need.
Thank you, Councilor Palacio. Okay, last speaker, Mayor Tory.
Thank you very much. And just to start off, I'll say thank you, of course, to Chair Crawford. I've said it many times. I'll say it again, to the city staff, to the members of the Budget Committee, and to members of Council, because I think it has been a civilized, thoughtful discussion today. I should just indicate there are some motions among many that I'll be supporting, including those from Councillors Mihevc, Fragadakis, Bailau, Crawford, and Davis. I will not be supporting motions that have to do with the restoration of the vehicle registration tax. I will not be supporting Councillor Mamalides' motions, and I will not be supporting the motion of Deputy Mayor Holliday on the time-based transfer.
Give me this one.
Madam Speaker, I had the privilege as mayor to attend 4 out of the public meetings that we had on the budget. And I'll start off by saying there were a couple of people, and it wasn't more than a couple, who did stand up at those meetings and say they thought that we should increase taxes. There weren't many. In fact, at a recent town hall that I was at in North York with a couple of hundred, I would say, average people, I took a poll. I took a chance. The media was there, and I didn't know what the results were going to be, a straw poll by show of hands. 20% said freeze taxes. About 60% said taxes should be raised at the rate of inflation, and 20% said taxes should be raised more than that. And I look at that result, and I wasn't the slightest bit surprised by it, because leading the city is not unlike leading and working in this council. You have to try to find a reasonable consensus to move forward, and it has been and continues to be my judgment that we have to show a degree of restraint in keeping the city affordable when it comes to the bill we send to people so that they can continue to live their lives and so that they know they have some assurance that our bill we send them is not going to grow faster than the rate of inflation. So I heard a lot about the issues, and we've heard a lot in here today about the issues that we're not solving with this budget. But I will tell you that at all those meetings and at all the events that I go to across the city, and there aren't many people in here that go to more, there are some that go to as many, What I've heard more so than anything else about the city is hope. I've heard a lot about hope in the city. Yes, there are problems, but I've heard hope that is in fact attributable in part to the fact we have one of the lowest rates of unemployment in this city in a long, long time. And so it means that people, and there are people who are still finding it difficult to become included, but there are lots of other people who for the first time in a long time have that sense of hope that they can get a job, which is the best thing that they can have in the city. They see, investors do, and people who are wanting to start up businesses, a well-run, well-managed city. And that gives people confidence both at home and abroad. And people are seeing and feeling confidence in the city. And they're feeling the confidence because I believe that we have actually achieved, or we're in the process of achieving, that balance between, on the one hand, making sure we have the money that is necessary to run the city government, and on the other hand, actually delivering improved services to people. So I believe they have hope, Madam Speaker, because they actually see a city, for the first time ever since the targets were set, moving forward to meet its targets on affordable housing. Before I got here, we would set the targets. They were set, I think, back in 2009, and actually a report I think Councillor Mahaliti wrote, and then every year the City Council would fail to meet them. And they have hope from that. Not because it solved the problem. We want to do more and we want to do it faster, but at least we're now meeting the targets. And I can assure you, in the time that I have here, we're going to meet or exceed those targets. I hope exceed them every single year without exception. They have hope because they see 20,000 new recreation spaces being created. And they know that that's not going to solve the entire problem, but it's 20,000 that we didn't have yesterday if this budget is approved. Same with extended library hours, which we had the honor to talk about in Scarborough yesterday. More police officers to be hired. Hope for people all over the city who will benefit from a low-income transit equity pass, a 2-hour transit hop-on, hop-off pass, a continuation of kids riding free on the transit system. The whole notion that it should be suggested by my friend Councillor Perks through you, Madam Speaker, that we haven't done anything for transit is laughable. This budget contains millions of new dollars for significant transit initiatives, not to mention the money that will hopefully be approved when we vote on motions in a moment or two to actually do more to address transit overcrowding. Hope that is expressed by many young people who are heartened by our adoption and funding of Transform TO. I remember in this chamber it was said a long time ago, it'll never be funded, nobody will ever move forward with it, it wasn't included in the budget. It's funded. It's funded and we're moving forward with it, and I'm proud of that. Same for the city's first ever anti-black racism program. Hope coming from significant investments we are making in shelter beds after a group of us came together, and that included me having to acknowledge, as I did, that we had to do more. And this budget is allocating more investment to do more when it comes to shelters. I heard one councillor saying today, Madam Speaker, that the budget's going in the right direction but not going fast enough. And I wish we could go faster on every single thing. Homelessness and shelters, affordable housing, transit. I wish we could speed all of those things up. But there are waiting lists that we are now addressing. For the first time, a line item has been pointed out on TCHC capital repairs. We are growing each and every year with we're growing in terms of the progress we're making. The lists were what we're growing before. I'll just conclude, if I may, Madam Speaker, by saying this. We have a lot of work to do on addressing a lot of these issues. And if I believed that simply raising property taxes was going to provide the answer, then I would say so. But I know that that can't work by itself. We've got some difficult work to do all over again, thanks, quite frankly, to the ill-advised, short-sighted decision that was made up the street with respect to road tolls. But I will take on the responsibility that we have to make some decisions on the long-term financing of the city. We have reports coming forward for us to address. But for now, we've shown that it is possible to restrain tax increases to help keep the city affordable for people, and at the same time to invest tens of millions of new dollars in improved programs and services, much of it for the very same people who are struggling the most. And I'll say one last thing, and that is that in years gone by, all of these dire things that are done to use reserves and to use one-time payments were done in many years to a greater extent than this year. The difference was that there weren't the investments that accompanied it in transit, in housing, in childcare. That's the difference. We're doing some of those things in lesser amounts than we did in years gone by, but we're using those things to make investments in people and in building a great city we've got lots of work to do, but I think this budget moves us forward on every single account. And I think that I hope that you'll support it, and I think people will find it a budget that is to their liking in terms of achieving that balance and getting it as close to right as we can in challenging circumstances. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a number of motions. To give the councillors an opportunity to put them in order, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Well, to put the list on the screen. Is everyone ready? Okay, so our first motion is motion 2A by Councillor Mammoliti. Yes. So you want to vote on A, B, C, D, E. All right. So 1A, recorded vote.
Councillor Bailao, please, and Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong. Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor Shiner, please.
Councillor Fillion, please.
Councillor Perruzza, please.
Part 1A does not carry. The vote is 4-38.
1B.
Can I reopen that, please? Yeah. I just pulled the fifth field. Very first one.
I think you should stick with that vote.
I've never done it before.
We're saving you for yourself.
I've never done it before.
Okay, somebody move. As long as you say we can vote it as a package. Or we won't reopen. Yeah, I know, but if we'll reopen it as long as you agree that we vote on it as a package.
You rock, Speaker. You truly rock.
This is the moment where the speaker shines.
Yeah, whatever I say goes today. Okay, to reopen on favor, carried. Let's go for 1A again.
Councillor Crisanti and Councillor Holland, thank you. Councillor Cole, please.
Part 1A does not carry. The vote is 5-37.
Come on. Okay, we're not. 5B. 5B. Recorded vote. Oh, come on. Yeah, like, please just watch your fingers, my God.
Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong, please. Councillor Shiner, Councillor Perruzza, Councillor DiGiorgio, and Councillor McMahon, please.
Part 1B does not carry. The vote is 10-32.
Councillor Shiner, yes?
Just on a point of privilege, I hope not to vote incorrectly. However, I started the meeting with my green button not lighting up, and now both of mine don't light up. So if someone could have it fixed for the next meeting, and I'll be as cautious as I can during this one, but it doesn't register any of my votes on my own table here.
I had that, Paul and I had that.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't close the vote unless we call your name. Well, I don't know. Okay, let's go. C.
Councillor Lee, please. Councillor Perruzza, please.
Part C does not carry. The vote is 10 to 32.
D.
Councillor DiGiorgio and Councillor Perruzza, please.
Part D does not carry. The vote is 12 to 30.
E. Which ones were you going to let go, Councillor Mammoliti?
That's right, Speaker. You keep your eye on them. I'll let you know in a few minutes.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor DiGiorgio, Councillor Wong-Tam, Councillor Pasternak.
Councillor Mihevc, please.
Part E does not carry. The vote is 1 to 41.
F.
Now's your time to back down, Georgia.
F.
Councillor Pasternak, please. Councillor DiGiorgio, Councillor Perruzza. Councillor Pasternak, thank you.
Part F does not carry. The vote is 8 to 33.
G. Yes, Councillor Mammoliti.
G for Giorgio. As much as I would love to do this, I think that my emotions took the best of me with respect to where these parks might be, and I don't think it's right to try and take the money away from our local community, as much as I would love to.
So you're eliminating G?
So all of G 1, 2, 3, and 4, I will withdraw.
Withdraw. All in favor? Yes, I see that. At least you're keeping the seniors exercise park in. I was wondering what you had against seniors.
I didn't ask for your input, ma'am.
Okay, now we go to 2. You want these separately too? 2A.
You actually can't move E. E is not legal. It's in the hands of the Ontario Municipal Board and the Judicial Court. Speaker, he cannot move E.
Councillor Perks.
He's
please,
asking
Part
the
A.
province.
Two A does not carry. The vote is 3 to 39.
B. Recorded vote.
Councillor Pasternak, please.
Part 2B does not carry. The vote is 17 to 25.
Two C.
Councillor Perks, please.
Councillor Cole, please.
Part 2C carries 31 to 11.
Two D.
Councillor Thompson and Councillor Carroll, thank you.
Part 2D carries 29 to 13.
Councillor Perks?
On point E, Speaker, Councillor Mammoliti is moving to do something which is directly contrary to instructions we gave legal staff to defend the ward boundary review, and the number of councillors is contained in there, and that vote was taken within the last year. So it would need a reopening or a two-thirds reconsideration or something like that. It's directly contrary to the position of this council taken within this year in instructions to our legal staff. I'm not.
Yeah. So it's, yeah, so it's not the same, so it is in order. Recorded vote.
Part E does not carry. The vote is 11 to 31.
Okay, 2B. Can we just vote on that as a package? Councillor Mammoliti? Pardon? Okay, number 1.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor Lee. Councillor Perruzza, your vote, please.
Part 1 does not carry. The vote is 5 to 37.
Okay, 2.
Councillor Shiner, please.
Part 2 does not carry. The vote is 2 to 40.
3.
Councillor Palacio, please.
Part 3 does not carry. The vote is 4 to 38.
4.
So when the traffic wardens can't get to the right place, we send someone to quickly clear them.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor Bailão, Councillor Karygiannis, please.
Part 4 does not carry. The vote is 5 to 37.
Part 5.
Councillor Carroll, please. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Bailão, Councillor Perruzza, Councillor Davis, and Councillor Matlow, please.
Part 5 does not carry. The vote is 4 to 38.
6. Is there a reason for a separate vote?
Yeah, I want it on record.
Oh. One vote, you'll get you. It gets you the same vote.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I really do appreciate your words of wisdom.
Yeah, I know.
Councillor Karygiannis, please. Councillor Bailão, Councillor Shiner, Councillor Perruzza, Councillor Matlow. Councillor Burnside, Councillor Holland, please.
Councillor Campbell, please.
Part 6 does not carry. The vote is 4 to 38.
7.
Councillor Bailao, Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong, please. Councillor McMahon.
Part 7 does not carry. The vote is 1 to 41.
8.
Councillor Layton, Councillor Wong Tam, please.
Part 8 does not carry. The vote is 1 to 41.
Okay, motion 3 by Councillor Fragedakis. Recorded vote.
Councillor Perruzza, please.
Councillor Crisanti and Councillor Holland, please.
The motion carries 36 to 6.
Motion 4B by Councillor Pasternak. Recorded vote.
Councillor Layton, please. Councillor Wong Tam, Councillor Carroll.
Councillor Fletcher, please. Councillor Crisanti, please.
Councillor Fragedakis, please.
The motion carries 32 to 10.
Motion 4C by Councillor Pasternak.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor Perks.
Councillor Crisanti and Councillor Palacio, please. Councillor Crisanti, please.
The motion does not carry. The vote is 20 to 22.
Motion number 6. Recorded vote.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor Carmichael Grab.
The motion carries 26 to 16.
Motion 7A by Councillor Holliday.
Councillor Pasternak, please. Councillor Perruzza, Councillor Wong Tam.
Councillor Crisanti, please.
Councillor Perruzza and Councillor Pasternak, please.
The motion does not carry. The vote is 6-36.
Motion 8 by Councillor Mihevc. You want them all split? Okay. Number 8, yeah. Okay, 1.
Councillor Pasternak, Councillor Perruzza, please, and Councillor Karygiannis. Thank you. Councillor Perruzza.
Part 1 carries 38-4.
2.
Councillor Perruzza, Councillor DeGiorgio, Councillor Shiner, Councillor Pasternak, please.
Councillor Pragadakis, please, and Councillor Fletcher, please.
Part 2 carries 37-5.
3. Recorded vote. They've, Councillor Campbell, you've asked for recorded vote on all of them?
Councillor Pasternak, Councillor Perruzza, Councillor Layton, and Councillor Wong Tam, please. And Councillor Carmichael Greb, please.
Part 3 carries 30-12.
Part 4.
Councillor Perruzza, Councillor Carmichael Greb, Councillor Pasternak, please.
Councillor Cole, Councillor Fletcher, please.
Part 4 carries 35-7.
Motion 9 by Councillor Thompson. Recorded vote.
Councillor Fletcher, please.
Yeah, sorry. I just got it. Okay, sorry.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor Wong-Tam. Councillor Pasternak. Councillor Shan, please.
The motion carries 41-1.
Okay, motion 10A by Councillor Cressy. Recorded vote.
Councillor Alshamari, please. Councillor Shiner, Councillor Davis, Councillor Hart.
Councillor Cole, please.
Councillor Davis, please.
Councillor Cole, please. Thank you.
The motion carries 38-4.
10B.
Councillor Karygiannis, please. Councillor Carroll, Councillor Perks. Councillor Perruzza. Councillor Davis, please.
Councillor Fragedakis, please.
The motion carries 39-3.
10C.
Councillor Perruzza, Councillor DeGiorgio, Councillor McMahon, and Councillor Pasternak, please.
Councillor Ford, please, and Councillor Holland, please.
The motion carries 40-2.
10D.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor DeGiorgio, Councillor Doucette. Councillor Shiner and Councillor Pasternak.
The motion carries 41-1.
12A by Councillor Wong-Tam.
Councillor Crisanti and Councillor Palacio, please.
The motion carries 41-1.
14A by Councillor De Beermaker.
Councillor Doucette, please. Councillor Carmichael Greb.
Councillor Crisanti and Councillor Holland, please.
The motion carries 30 to 12.
14B. (14B).
Councillor Karygiannis, Councillor Carroll, Councillor Pasternak, and Councillor Perruzza, please.
Councillor Cole, please. And Councillor Troisi, please. Thank you.
The motion carries 38 to 4.
15A revised. Recorded.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor Carmichael Greb, Councillor Bailao.
Councillor Palacio, please.
The motion carries 33 to 9.
Motion 16 by Councillor Crawford. Yes, yes. Councillor Arjamari had asked that it be voted on separately. We'll vote on one first.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor McMahon, Councillor Wong Tam. Councillor Wong Tam, Councillor McMahon, please.
Part 1 does not carry. The motion loses on a tie, 21 for each side.
Part 2.
Councillor Perruzza, please.
Part 2 carries 25 to 17.
Part 3. Recorded vote.
Councillor Mammoliti, please. Thank you.
Part 3 does not carry. The vote is 20 to 22.
Our next motion is motion 1 by Councillor Matlow. Yes. We'll vote on part 1 first.
Councillor Davis, please. Councillor Karygiannis. Councillor Karygiannis.
Part 1 carries 38 to 4.
Okay, part 2, recorded vote. Councillor Burnside, is your name on the screen for a reason? Okay.
Councillor Perruzza and Councillor DeGiorgio, please. Councillor Karygiannis and Councillor Pasternak. Councillor Pasternak.
Part 2 does not carry. The vote is 19 to 23.
4A by Councillor Pasternak.
Councillor Perruzza, please.
Councillor Fragedakis, please. Councillor Burnside, please.
Turn the TV.
The motion carries 33 to 9.
Motion 5 by Councillor Doucette, recorded vote.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor Matlow, Councillor Lee. Councillor Bailao, please.
The motion does not carry. The vote is 13 to 29.
Motion 7B by Councillor Holiday.
Subconscious urge to vote yes to tax increases twice in one meeting.
Okay, so can somebody reopen it then? Okay, by Councillor Thompson, all in favor. Let's vote. Please watch those fingers.
Councillor Pasternak, Councillor Mallow, and Councillor Lee, please. Councillor Karygiannis, please. Councillor Lee.
The motion does not carry. The vote is 13 to 29.
Okay, motion 7B by Councillor Holliday.
Councillor Davis, please. Councillor Pasternak, Councillor Perruzza.
Councillor Mammoliti, please, thank you. Councillor Crisanti, thank you.
Councillor Perruzza, please.
The motion carries 33 to 9.
Motion 11 by Councillor Fletcher.
Councillor Perruzza.
4-3 Toronto final.
Councillor Davis.
Over?
Deputy Mayor, please.
4-3.
Councillor Holland, please. Councillor Mammoliti, please.
They finished. They didn't go in overtime, right?
Couldn't. I mean, you know, they usually end around this time. They probably ended about 20 minutes ago.
The motion carries 41 to 1.
Councillor Karygiannis, you...
There's two motions that I voted wrong on. One was that was Councillor Pasternak's motion about instead office, and the other one was Councillor Doucette's motion about the personal vehicle tax. I'd like to reopen them, please.
Well...
I think I'm on the prevailing side on both of those.
Madam Speaker, I wasn't paying attention.
Okay, hold on. Motion 5 does not change the vote, correct? I know, but let's just look at motion 5. Am I correct? Yes, doesn't change. Okay, so we can open Councillor Doucette's motion. Anybody want on favor?
Prevailing side, Madam Speaker.
Okay, so let's vote on it again.
Which one is this? Okay, thank you.
Councillor Doucette's motion, motion 5.
You have a wonderful day. That's nice.
This is...
What? This is motion 5. Oh, we're voting now. Yeah. What? I always watch my fingers.
The motion does not carry. The vote is 12 to 30.
Okay, so we're not opening that vote again. This is 3 times. Now, The other one, Councillor Karygiannis, I believe it changes the.
Madam Chair,
yeah.
I do have a constituency office, and I mean, I was not paying attention, so therefore I would like to reopen. I do have a constituency office. Do it again, come on.
But it changes the vote. Okay, just one sec, Council. Just give me a minute so we can go back and look at the vote.
But he is allowed to request the will of the body.
No, I don't believe so, Shirley.
Oh, come on. Sure.
Yes, Councillor Shiner.
Sorry. Normally, we reopen an item if a member identifies that they made a mistake in pushing their button or voted incorrectly.
Yes.
This is a case where my colleague has been encouraging my colleague to understand what he did, and it's a long time ago. So he wants to change his vote for the reason that now he understands he might have voted incorrectly. That's not an error in pressing the button.
True.
And if you start a process like that, that allows all of us to rethink our votes and the impact and change them later.
Thank you, Councillor Shiner. Okay.
Point of order, Chair.
Yes.
I did vote by mistake. I pushed the wrong button.
Okay.
And I'm looking to...
Okay. I'm waiting to hear from staff on what the vote was. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a recorded vote to reopen because it could change the outcome of the vote because it was a close vote. So recorded vote to reopen. Councillor Perks, yes.
I have a very clear memory that on the issue of the university bike lane in 2010, the councillor was not permitted to even have a vote on whether or not we would reconsider it, and the reason given by the clerk's office in that instance is that it would change the outcome.
Yes.
So
I remember.
we were not even permitted to do this.
Yeah, but you open, you change the vote.
Oh, I see. So it won't change the outcome?
No, that's
right. Ah, okay.
Okay, recorded vote. Let's just vote. If you can yes, yes. Recorded vote on the reopening.
Councillor Bailao, please. Councillor Carroll.
Councillor Holland, please. Councillor Holland, please.
Councillor Pasternak, you need to sit in your seat, please. We're in the middle of a vote.
The motion to reopen does not carry. The vote is 21 for each side.
Okay, let's continue. Our next vote, our next one, where are we now? (12B) by Councillor Wong Tam. Okay, watch how you're voting. We're in the middle of a vote.
Councillor Carroll, please. Councillor Shiner. Councillor Shan.
The motion does not carry. The vote is 11 to 31.
12C by Councillor Wong Tam.
Councillor Perruzza, Councillor DiGiorgio, Councillor Wong Tam, please. Councillor Shiner, Councillor Pasternak.
The motion carries 35-7.
Motion 12D by Councillor Wong Tam.
Councillor Palacio, please.
Councillor Perruzza, please.
The motion carries 34-8.
Motion 12E by Councillor Wong Tam. Recorded vote.
Councillor Perruzza, please.
Councillor Palacio, please.
The motion carries 36-6.
Motion 13 by Councillor Bailao.
Councillor Carroll, please. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Councillor Shiner, Councillor Perruzza.
Councillor Holland, please. Councillor Troisi, please.
The motion carries unanimously, 42 in favor.
Motion 15B by Councillor Davis.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor McMahon, Councillor Wong Tam, Councillor Pasternak.
The motion carries 41-1.
Motion 15C by Councillor Davis.
Oh, that white sheet I gave you here.
Here, yeah, I got it. Oh, yeah.
Councillor Carmichael Greb, Councillor Shiner, Councillor Perruzza, and Councillor McMahon, please.
The motion carries 35-7.
Before we take the final vote, we have members that have declared an interest. So items as it pertains to expansion and provision of telephone, wireless, internet, and television services contained in the IT, Toronto Police, TTC, and TCHC budgets. Mayor Tory. Okay, recorded vote. No, we're voting on those things.
Councillor Mammoliti, please.
Councillor Carroll and Councillor Karygiannis, please.
The motion, or sorry, the item is amended as it pertains to various telecom matters in certain budgets, carries 39-2.
Okay, item as it pertains to the Toronto Public Library. Okay, no, the second one first. Yeah, you're okay, Councillor Pastrana. You can stay here for this vote.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor McMahon, Councillor Wong-Tam, Councillor Davis.
Councillor Fragedakis, please. Councillor Crisanti, please. Thank you.
Councillor Wong-Tam, please.
The item is amended as it pertains to news summary services, carries 40-1.
Okay, now the next one as item as it pertains to the Toronto Public Library. Councillor Pastrnak. Recorded vote.
Councillor Perruzza, please. Councillor Wong-Tam, Councillor Shiner, Councillor Pastrnak, Deputy Mayor, please. Councillor Karygiannis.
Why did the mayor? This is the
Councillor
library.
de Bearmaker, please. Councillor Holland, please.
This is the library.
Oh, I just closed the vote.
Yeah, that's why I repeated it. It's the library. Yeah. Okay.
The item is amended as it pertains to the library, carries 40-1.
Okay, so item is amended. Recorded vote. The whole thing. And the Leafs won 4-3.
Councillor Bailao, please. Councillor Perruzza, Councillor McMahon, Councillor Pastrnak, please.
Councillor Palacio, please.
The balance of the item is amended, carries 35-7.
Members, before I ask for a motion to enact the general bills, may I have a motion regarding the consideration of submissions on zoning bylaw and official plan amendments? Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Speaker. The committee and council considered submissions in making a decision on zoning bylaw and official plan amendments.
All in favor? Carried. Deputy Mayor Menon Wong, you have a motion to introduce certain bills.
Yes, that leave be granted to introduce bills 166 to 170 inclusive.
Shall leave be granted to introduce these bills? Recorded vote.
Councillor McMahon, Councillor Wong-Tam, Councillor Layton, please. Councillor Pasternak, Councillor Davis. Councillor Perks, please.
Councillor de Bearmaker, please. Councillor Mihevik, please. Councillor Fillion, please.
Okay, members, can you please sit? Can you please be seated just for 2 more minutes? Councillor Burnside, did you say no? Yeah. Councillor Crisanti, Councillor Holland, Crawford, Robinson, Cressy, DeGiorgio. Now, everybody needs to be seated when we're voting. Councillor Crisanti, please.
Councillor Fletcher, please. Councillor Holland, please.
Councillor Holland, please. And Councillor Fletcher, please. Councillor Fletcher, your vote, please.
The motion to introduce the bills carries 37 to 4.
Shall these bills be passed and declared as a bylaw? Recorded vote.
Councillor Bailao, Councillor Karygiannis, Councillor Perks, Councillor Lee, Councillor
Councillor
DiGiorgio,
Crisanti, Councillor Palop, please, can you take your seats? Councillor Mihevik, please, we have a few more votes.
The motion to enact the bills carries 37 to 4.
Councillor Holland, you have a motion regarding absentees.
I do, Madam Speaker, that the City Council excuse the absences of Councillor Justin J. DiCiano and Councillor Mark Grimes, Councillor Norman Kelly from February 12, 2018 City Council meeting.
Not just standing up.
All those in favor, recorded vote.
Councillor McMahon, Councillor Wong-Tam, Councillor Layton.
Councillor Cole, please.
Councillor Davis, thank you.
The motion to excuse absentees carries 40 to 1.
Okay. Okay. Do you know, members of council, we're trying to wrap up the council proceedings, and for council not to pay attention and to disrupt, the staff are trying to do their job, and all I hear is people screaming. No. Okay, well. Okay, you know. To reopen, all in favor? Okay, let's do the vote again, but please, everybody take their seats. It has to be recorded.
Councillor McMahon, Councillor Wong-Tam, Councillor Karygiannis, please and thank you.
Councillor Cole, please.
The motion to excuse absentees carries unanimously 41 in favor.
Councillor Ainsley, you have a motion to introduce the confirming bill.
The leave be granted to introduce a bill to confirm to the point of the introduction of this motion the proceedings of Toronto City Council meeting number 37 on February 12, 2018.
Shall leave be granted to introduce this bill? Recorded vote. Okay, we have one more vote after this and you can go.
Councillor Perruzza, Councillor McMahon, Councillor Wong-Tam, please. Councillor Shan. Councillor Mihevc. Councillor Fillion, please.
The motion to introduce the confirming bill carries 40-1.
Shall this bill be passed and declared as a bylaw? Recorded vote.
Councillor McMahon, Councillor Layton, Councillor Davis, please. Councillor Davis.
Councillor Holland and Councillor Robinson, please. Councillor Robinson, please.
The motion to enact the confirming bill carries 38-3.
Councillor McMahon?
Yes, thank you very much. People, for your Family Day Monday, please join us in the beach for the Best Art project in the city. Winter Station starts at noon. Next 6 weeks. Thanks.
Thank you. So let's thank the staff that are here. Amazing job. And thank you to members. This meeting is adjourned.